The middle manager sat pensively in the library, firmly affirming that the barrier preventing high-level creatures had been fully activated with no errors in his setup. However, he revealed that during a brief absence, an unusual gap suddenly appeared in the barrier, a phenomenon that could not be explained if everything had followed the rules. Jin Hyuk was not easily convinced, doubting the rationale behind the excuse of someone titled Omnipotent Manager, especially when the system was supposed to be flawless. With a skeptical gaze, Jin Hyuk questioned the reason for leaving the post given by the manager, causing him to fall into an awkward silence as he could not provide a convincing defense. The manager lowered his voice slightly and recounted a serious event. That day, Murim suddenly launched an attack on the Empire, forcing him to leave his post to directly handle the conflict. The story stunned Jin Hyuk. A war between Murim and the Empire was not only beyond expectations but also hinted at a systemic-level threat never mentioned before. The more he pondered, the more confused Jin Hyuk became. Murim had been punished and stripped of all resources after defeat, so where did they get the forces to wage war in such a short time? The manager admitted to breaching the contract by being absent without notice, something that clearly Jin Hyuk could not easily overlook given his nature of valuing control. He slowly bowed his head, removed his hat with respect and sincerity. Under solemn light, he made an offer to atone, preparing to open a special opportunity to make up for the mistake. Standing amidst treasures shimmering with spatial light, the manager solemnly declared, Jin Hyuk was allowed to choose any item from the rare collection, all of which were precious treasures hard to find in the tower. The man in a suit with a refined appearance looked up confidently, emphasizing that having access to and purchasing items from his collection was already a great privilege, implying that the value lay in the opportunity, not just the item. Jin Hyuk calmly observed the merchant, inwardly smiling as he saw the other party trying to uphold the deal at all costs. Clearly this guy was afraid of losing an unusual customer. Unshaken, Jin Hyuk coldly raised his glowing hand, indicating he still held the initiative and set clear conditions on the item he would pay for. As the light flared, Yam, a small ancient creature with a cheerful face, appeared in Jin Hyuk's hand. He smiled gently and casually mentioned that the exchange item was a scale from an ancient creature. The merchant's eyes lit up like a child seeing a rare toy. In his mind, this sparkling scale was an irresistible treasure, fueling his craving for collecting antiques. Jin Hyuk quickly finalized the matter, proposing to trade the scale for a cracked compass. Holding Yam, he recalled the initial agreement, emphasizing this was a very fair deal. The merchant sighed helplessly and nodded in agreement inwardly. The deep sigh was recorded by the system as an activated skill, expressing undeniable regret. He stepped back a step, arguing that Yam was still immature and didn't even know his real name yet. For that reason, he implied that the exchanged item was not entirely equivalent in value to the cracked compass. Continuing the negotiation, the merchant cleverly shifted focus, complaining that items like the cracked compass were rare and hard to find, and he needed to make a profit, so he couldn't trade so easily. With a cunning and sly attitude, he generously offered a final option. He would agree to the deal if Jin Hyuk added 9 more scales and rented Yam for a week. He spoke as if suffering a loss, but his eyes revealed greed. Jin Hyuk recalled a notorious merchant in the tower, Rick Hennessy, who always unreasonably lowballed prices on every item regardless of their true value. Rick Hennessy reacted unexpectedly and cautiously, immediately rejecting the offer, claiming he was not interested, a typical behavior of stubborn brokers trying to hide their true intentions. Jin Hyuk, holding Gaguma in his arms, turned his back and walked away coldly. Rick was confused because it was clear Jin Hyuk needed the compass but seemed ready to abandon the deal. Unable to hide his annoyance, Jin Hyuk bluntly said that he had considered overlooking Rick before, but being deliberately lowballed made him decide to negotiate with someone more powerful, Hastings. Rick began to worry when Jin Hyuk mentioned legal consequences. Contract violations by a manager were serious offenses, especially since it could be reported to higher authorities. With a sinister smile and sharp eyes, Jin Hyuk continued to apply pressure. He recalled that Rick had previously gotten into trouble with a low-level manager, and if this time it was a middle manager, things would be much more serious. Terrified at the prospect of being summoned by superiors, Rick panicked, shouted out Jin Hyuk's name, begging him to stop, and proposed renegotiating the terms. Truly desperate, Rick accepted the most unreasonable offer, agreeing to trade the item for just 1 scale from Gaguma, hoping Jin Hyuk would stop threatening him. Jin Hyuk reached toward Gaguma, preparing to pull out the scale according to the agreed terms, acting decisively like a CEO dealing with a dishonest employee. While Rick stood behind trembling and cheering, Jinhyuk gently informed Gaguma about removing a scale. He reassured that the process would only hurt briefly, showing the cunning often hidden beneath his gentle exterior. As Kang Jinhyuk reached out to take the reward, Gaguma's teary eyes and pitiful expression melted his resolve, causing him to hesitate. Gaguma's expression stunned Jinhyuk, and even the old merchant behind him could not hide his emotional surprise. Jinhyuk tried to maintain his composure, reminding himself not to soften before those pleading eyes, but his voice began to waver. Gaguma did not give up. It continued looking at him with sparkling watery eyes, pouting lips, and a pitiful tweet sound. Overwhelmed by Gaguma's infinite emotional assault, both Jinhyuk and the old merchant simultaneously succumbed, the former clutching his chest in agony, the latter covering his face helplessly. With no other choice, the merchant reluctantly postponed payment, while Gaguma grinned triumphantly after its emotional victory. In exchange for the perfect deal, Jinhyuk received a special item, the spatial compass, capable of guiding to cracks within the tower. Jinhyuk appeared satisfied with the deal, though the merchant secretly grumbled about being duped and resolved to keep this matter secret from Hastings. As he left, Jinhyuk suddenly stopped, turned back, and voiced one last request that made the merchant wary. Jinhyuk demanded proper punishment for the low-level manager Kaman, who had repeatedly interfered illegally in the tower's floors, as a fitting warning. Activating the skill Sword Steps of the King, Jinhyuk placed his hand on the giant bird, preparing to deliver a decisive strike with his characteristic cold composure. The sudden action caught the female bird off guard. Horror was evident on her face as her body was locked in an overwhelming attack stance. Purple eyes gleaming behind the mask, Jinhyuk whispered coldly like a death sentence, "It ends here." In a moment of fear, the bird begged for mercy, but Jinhyuk did not hesitate, immediately unleashing Dark Sky Demon Blade, black energy swirling around his pounding fist. The skill, Silent Wave, Burst was activated. A purple energy wave erupted, engulfing the enemy's body in a silent yet extremely brutal magical explosion. The energy whirlwind spread widely, blowing away the surrounding space. The enemy's body was torn apart amid the radiant purple wave, scattering feathers and dazzling light. Severely injured, the female bird villain groaned in pain. Blood poured from her mouth, proving the ruthless destructive power of the previous skill. As the battlefield shook, a monster tribe warrior retreated in fear. His angry and chaotic expression showed that the battle formation had completely collapsed. Meanwhile, Alice, who had worried about Jinhyuk, cheered his name with admiration and pride as a confirmation of the absolute victory. Witnessing his comrades being defeated, the Beastman tribe leader finally shouted a retreat order. There was no choice but to flee before the unexpected fury. At the very moment the skill Sword Steps of the King was activated, Jinhyuk placed his hand on the opponent's body, initiating a close-range attack with the cold decisiveness of one holding the initiative. Surprised by the rapid approach, the giant bird had no time to react. Jinhyuk closed in on a vital spot, causing dizziness before the official strike landed. Purple eyes glowing behind the wooden mask, Jinhyuk coldly declared the battle over, leaving no chance for negotiation or mercy. As the monster bird hurriedly begged for mercy, Jinhyuk activated the skill Dark Sky Demon Blade, ending all hesitation and delivering the finishing blow. Silent Wave Burst was unleashed. A powerful purple energy explosion shattered space, sweeping the target into the magical storm with no escape. The shockwave from the explosion shook the entire hall. The giant bird's body was blown away in the purple energy vortex, feathers flying amid dazzling light. Blood spurted from its mouth as the monster bird finally screamed in pain. The attack pierced its defenses and completely destroyed its last vitality. In the distance, the Beast Tribe chief panicked at the inevitable situation, shouting retreat orders as he saw the battle line collapse under Jinhyuk's hand. Melina collapsed to the floor, breathing a relieved sigh. Finally, the life-or-death battle had ended, leaving exhaustion but also satisfaction. Jinhyuk turned his back and walked away calmly, quietly telling his comrades that elemental spirits would handle the remaining forces, a declaration that victory was entirely his side's. Alice approached with a serious expression, her eyes suspicious as she noticed Jinhyuk's strange reaction. She could not hide her confusion as the recent summoning seemed less effective than expected. Raising the poet's necklace pendant glowing bright red, Alice confirmed that the magic had taken effect. However, the summoned being did not respond as hoped, leading her to suspect something was causing his dissatisfaction. The story rewound 15 minutes earlier in the ruined temple. Alice approached a body kneeling on the ground, the clear target of a special resurrection ritual. She bent down, placed her hand on the body, and activated the skill Blood Road. Dark red blood swirled around the soulless corpse as if drawing a path between life and death. Within the swirling blood magic space, Alice whispered an incantation. "O loyal blood clan, awaken." A dark magical aura rose, pulling the warrior's soul back to the living world. Under the red magical light, Bellis slowly opened his eyes. His initially empty gaze quickly turned into clear awareness as his soul stabilized within the newly summoned body. Alice looked down at Bellis with a calm yet authoritative gaze. She greeted him proudly, asserting ownership as if his rebirth was inevitable. She tilted her head, lips curling into a sharp smile. Her commanding proposal rang out. "Will you serve me again?" The question was not for choice but to confirm loyalty. Without hesitation, Bellis bowed deeply, placing his hand on his chest like a knight taking an oath. His voice rang out, deep and confident. "Yes, of course." On the blood-stained ground and among corpses in the cold main hall, Bellis knelt before Alice, the master who had resurrected him. His final oath echoed like a seal. "I, Bellis, will forever serve you." Alice, in a burst of rage, screamed in denial of the current outcome. As a proud dark noble, she could not bear being subdued by someone like Kang Jinhyuk, whom she once considered inferior to herself. Despair turned into madness. Alice struggled and screamed, shattering all remaining reason. Bound by the control ring, she shouted to be killed again. Anything was better than living in this humiliation. Facing her uncontrollable reaction, Jinhyuk merely sighed. His humorous and calm expression only highlighted the stark contrast in mindset between them, one crying out, the other, bored. Outside in the real world, sunlight shone down on the magnificent skyscraper, completely contrasting with the chaos that had just unfolded inside the tower. But that peace was only a surface for an approaching undercurrent. Hidden behind a door, Alice in the form of a young girl hugged her knees, whispering in astonishment. She did not expect to see that thing again, memory, power, or an unnamed bond. In her tormented mind, Alice screamed. The helplessness and chaos within her built up into a scream that tore through space, creating a painful echo throughout the room. Inside the room, Jinhyuk delivered a decisive strike with his knee to an unseen target, his eyes glowing mysteriously. From behind the door, Alice could only tremble, thinking silently, he truly is a terrifying monster. The white-haired vampire had just stepped into the training hell and was immediately beaten up, eyes rolling wildly, saliva dripping, a direct consequence of the first strict test. Alice, wearing cute cat-patterned pajamas, smiled calmly as she reassured the new victim, "Take it slow, you'll get used to it." She looked satisfied, as if the recent torture was just a light warm-up ritual. Jinhyuk was checking the newly received system messages, while behind him, Alice casually sipped her drink. She was completely unaffected by the previous violent warm-up. Without turning his head, Jinhyuk handed over the training duty. "Alice, train him for me." She just nodded slightly in agreement, the glass still in her hand as if it were an everyday matter. The modern city appeared in the morning light, a complete contrast to the chaotic world inside the tower. This was where Jinhyuk was about to enter to carry out a special mission. Amid the passing crowd, Jinhyuk walked in a black hoodie, head bowed low. His presence was like a shadow separated from the daily rhythm of life. He sat down on a public bench next to an elderly man with white hair and beard, wearing a brightly colored floral shirt, a humorous contrast between predator and tourist. Jinhyuk mocked, "Came all the way here? The empire must be really flush with cash." He realized the man beside him was no ordinary person. The mysterious old man removed his sunglasses, revealing wild white hair and a lion-like beard. He spoke with interest about the world outside the tower and seriously asked if his appearance was blending in. Jinhyuk glanced over and bluntly concluded, "You look more like a tourist." The old man was stunned, realizing his flashy outfit did nothing to help him blend in among humans. From outside the cafe, two mysterious strangers silently observed the meeting between Jinhyuk and the old man in the floral shirt, evoking a quiet atmosphere of suspicion weighing heavily around them. Surprised by the information he just heard, Jinhyuk dropped his spoon, eyes wide with alertness, and asked sharply, "What did you just say?" The old man leisurely enjoyed his ice cream, confirming that the heavenly demon, one of the strongest entities, had emerged from seclusion. This event occurred during the invasion of the 24th floor. Jinhyuk fell into tension, resting his hand on his forehead thoughtfully. The strongest Murim had awakened, and that ruined all his initial calculations. His eyes flashed with dissatisfaction. The situation unfolded too early compared to the original scenario where the heavenly demon was only supposed to appear after they had passed the middle floors. A hallucination appeared in Jin Hyok's mind. The heavenly demon manifested with a terrifying aura. Could it be that the Murim faction unexpectedly chose to ally with him? Battlefield memories surfaced. Amid screams and bloodshed, Jin Hyok envisioned a brutal prospect. Were they really shaking hands with the devil to prepare for a great war? Jin Hyok asked directly to the point. So you came to see me? To ask me to eliminate the heavenly demon? The old man gently shook his head, maintaining a calm attitude. He affirmed that Murim's invasion was an internal matter, and requesting Jin Hyok to intervene against the heavenly demon would be beyond permissible limits. Jin Hyok was dissatisfied with the half-hearted answer. His sharp eyes glanced up, questioning briefly but with pressure. Then what exactly is it? The silver-bearded old general began recounting the brutal memories from the previous invasion when the entire defense system was disabled by a traitor within, leading to serious consequences. After hearing this, Jinwoo quickly grasped the core issue. He concluded that there was a spy within the current empire, someone aiding the enemy faction. The old general confirmed Jinwoo's words, silently appreciating the young man's quick responsiveness and sharp intellect. With a serious expression, he continued to make the main request, not to eliminate the heavenly demon but to investigate and identify the Murim spy hiding within their ranks. The proposal came with an attractive reward. If Jinwoo completed this mission, he would be supported with the smoothest path to ascend higher floors along with strong backing from the empire. At the end of the meeting, the old general wearing sunglasses turned his back and walked away, leaving a promise to contact again when everything was thoroughly prepared. Before leaving completely, he stopped, looked back, and emphasized one last thing. A subtle warning to Jinwoo that Murim's conspiracy was not over, and a storm was coming. Jinwoo's shadow moved silently along the city street, his mind echoing every warning. The unusual upheavals, from interference on the lower floors to the sudden return of the heavenly demon, all signaled an approaching chaotic war. In the dim mirror, Jinwoo looked straight at himself. In his eyes was determination but also a hint of gloom, as if he was preparing mentally to enter another life-or-death game. Reflected in the mirror was an image of Jinwoo wearing a cloak, cold and cautious. The storm was coming, and this time he had to be one step ahead even before those trying to pull strings from the shadows. Jin Hyok stood in the purple mist, his mind clouded with anxiety. All events were slipping off their usual course. The scenarios he once knew well were gradually breaking down, making him more vigilant than ever. His gaze lifted to the hazy void as Jin Hyok wondered if he still had the ability to cope with the increasingly chaotic and unpredictable pace of this world. The relentless succession of events pushed Jin Hyok to his limit, forcing him to seriously consider whether he could continue to bear everything happening faster than he anticipated. Suddenly, a shattering sound rang out. A glass pane was smashed, signaling the dramatic arrival of a new force or an unforeseen turning point. From the flying shards, a figure unexpectedly broke through space and appeared, shaking not only the ground but also the air around Jin Hyok. Amid the chaos, Jin Hyok continued walking silently while those around him panicked at the inexplicable event that had just occurred. Seemingly exhausted by the unexpected developments, Jin Hyok decided to leave the familiar place. He needed a new space to restore his spirit and strategy. A system warning sounded. Jin Hyok had just entered the first floor of the Tower of Trials. This place had now transformed into a mysterious amusement park, vastly different from his memories. Alice appeared surprised by the strange location that had just appeared, not expecting such an area on the first floor. Her companion explained that very few people had ever known about this place, a secret hidden deep within the tower. As soon as danger was sensed, Alice's guard immediately stepped forward, blocking her and urgently ordering her to stay behind him, ready to respond to any unusual situation ahead. The white-haired bodyguard clenched his fists tightly, vowing to himself to become a better protector in this life, as a way to atone for past mistakes that could not yet be redeemed. Under the dim purple light, his seriousness was quickly broken by a hit on the head from Alice, who did not forget to remind him not to act too conspicuously while in disguise. Teresa appeared unusually embarrassed in simple everyday clothes, making the atmosphere awkward when facing Jin Hyok, who greeted her gently. She forced a smile and awkwardly started a conversation while Jinhyuk silently wondered at Teresa's unnatural attitude, confused by her noticeable change. Inwardly, Teresa could not help but blame herself for having hoped this was a private date with Jinhyuk, a romantic expectation that had just sparked and quickly faded away. Jinhyuk teased Teresa for her excessive shyness, making her even more flustered, as if he completely failed to understand the emotions tearing her apart at that moment. With a mischievous smile, Jinhyuk pointed forward, asking Teresa to follow his gaze, initiating the next surprise. From afar, a tall man in a coat approached. It was Stalker, whom Jinhyuk had deliberately invited to prevent Teresa from feeling bored due to lack of conversation partners. Stalker's face was full of suspicion and discomfort upon seeing that this place looked nothing like a training ground, contrary to the reason he was called here. Despite Stalker's skeptical look and Alice's questions, Jinhyuk officially declared the training session started, hinting at a surprising plan behind his smile. When the system suddenly announced a theme park hardcore event was activated, leaving Teresa and the others stunned. They immediately understood that from now until the event ended, all skills and items would be disabled, meaning they would have to survive using only their own strength. Immediately after the announcement, from the sky, an entity dressed in a pink animal costume flew down at high speed. A dust cloud enveloped the ground, creating a tense scene with no one knowing what would happen next. A strange rabbit mascot named Ravi appeared, excitedly waving to welcome everyone to the theme park. With an innocent appearance and a playful tone, Ravi claimed to be the host, but that only made the situation more unusual. The atmosphere instantly turned serious when Ravi declared the rules. The sole objective was to escape this hellish park. The group fell silent, realizing this was no joke but a real survival game. But Ravi didn't stop there. It emphasized that the mission would not be easy, because besides being unable to use skills or items, they would also face countless cruel challenges waiting ahead. The brutality of the game was confirmed by Ravi when it revealed that terrifyingly strong monsters would relentlessly hunt the players. Its insane smile made the scene darker and scarier than ever. The announcement opening Theme Park of Hell sounded like a signal opening the gates of hell. In an instant, a giant monster, Horror Raccoon Man, rushed out from the darkness. Chaos began to erupt in this deadly park. The white-haired female character panicked at the power and grotesque form of the Raccoon Man. She screamed in fear, completely helpless as all combat means were disabled. In her fear, she unexpectedly fought back with a punch to the monster's face. Although sudden, her reaction was not heroic but a scream full of disgust. "Kayak, it's gross!" turning the tense atmosphere into an ironically humorous one. Ravi, the bizarre rabbit host, suddenly froze. With a dumbfounded expression, it exclaimed, seemingly surprised that the first reaction was a criticism of the boss's appearance it had summoned. While monsters attacked relentlessly, Teresa easily destroyed a series of puppet machines with a powerful spinning kick, expressing disappointment that their strength was not as expected. Jinhyuk, calm as usual, appeared indifferent to this overly simple challenge. Jinhyuk punched a bizarre stuffed beast with a relaxed and joking expression. He wondered if the group had become too strong, then reassured himself to just treat this as a light stress relief exercise. Ravi, the panicked rabbit host, witnessed the chaotic scene as the beasts were mercilessly destroyed. Before its eyes, the hell park it painstakingly created was being utterly destroyed by intruders far beyond its expectations. Unbelievably, Ravi witnessed the entire hell park being ravaged by those it thought were just ordinary players. Meanwhile, Jinhyuk's group was extremely excited, rampaging among the piles of beast corpses. In despair and tears, Ravi screamed angrily, ordering the player group to stop. But given the current situation, its pleas only highlighted its helplessness on a battlefield that had spiraled out of control. The scene shifted to a completely different place, the 24th floor of the Tower of Trials. The Imperial City was shrouded in a gloomy atmosphere, with signs of a great battle visible through the smoky sky and cracked fortress walls. On the ruined fortress wall, two figures dressed in traditional Eastern attire were advancing. A tattered flag fluttered, symbolizing an era trembling amid storms. Namgung Jinho, a master from the Murim forces, looked at his companion with a smug smile. He gave a brief but meaningful compliment, appreciating the recent performance of the mysterious teammate. Amidst the battlefield scattered with Royal Knight corpses, Jinho acknowledged the other's superiority. Alone, he had eliminated an elite Imperial unit, something even Murim had to respect. The cold gaze of the young man with long purple hair revealed his name, Namgung Tian. He was the new factor changing the situation on the 24th floor, a Cold War god carrying overwhelming power. Namgung Tian thoughtfully gazed at the new power rising from his hand, a cold purple energy radiating as proof of his assimilation with Murim. To him, the world outside the tower was just a small playground where he easily crushed all obstacles without using his full strength. Walking together on the fortress steps, Namgung Jinho reassured Tian with a promise: if he defeated Kang Jinhyuk, the door out of the tower would open wide. For Murim, eliminating Jinhyuk was not only a mission but also a condition to restore control over the 24th floor. Looking down at the rubble from above, Tian showed absolute confidence in his power. He affirmed he could personally finish Kang Jinhyuk. However, the greatest wall was not Jinhyuk himself but his formidable teammates who could not be underestimated. With a serious face and sharp eyes, Tian admitted the reality that lone strength was insufficient. Jinhyuk's allies, those who also possessed tremendous power, were barriers making the plan to eliminate the target extremely difficult. When thinking about finishing Jinhyuk, Tian immediately imagined the prospect of the opponent's comrades rushing into danger. They would not hesitate to sacrifice themselves to protect him, making a solo strike impossible. Murim's leader, Namgung Jinho, nodded after hearing this, believing that the time bombs around Jinhyuk needed to be dealt with before taking action. He seriously asked who among them was the greatest threat to be eliminated first. Without hesitation, Namgung Tian firmly confirmed. Among those surrounding Jinhyuk, there was one person he was most wary of, an ally not only strong but also carrying great psychological and tactical influence within the team. Tian specifically named the most dangerous target, Teresa de Laurentia, the saint from Amsterdam. With holy power and combat ability beyond imagination, she was the strongest shield always standing between Jinhyuk and all dangers. Namgung Jinho smiled slyly upon hearing Teresa's name. He fully knew her noble identity, someone protected by an entire holy empire. That made eliminating Teresa both tempting and extremely dangerous. With a smirk and cunning eyes, Jinho silently calculated his course of action. He did not see Teresa merely as a strong obstacle but as a symbol of team loyalty. If that shield was broken, Jinhyuk would have to face death alone. Even in the midst of fierce fighting, Jinhyuk's group maintained smooth coordination. But the enemy had begun to implement a simultaneous ambush plan targeting both Jinhyuk and Teresa. Teresa fought confidently beside Jinhyuk, her gaze fixed on him with unwavering determination. She was completely unaware of the approaching danger. From behind, a stranger smiled coldly. His plan was clear: to eliminate each of Jinhyuk's closest allies, starting with Teresa, the most important piece in the enemy's network of allies. The scene opens in Amsterdam, where the sunlit canals flow through the peaceful city, a complete contrast to the undercurrents simmering in the world of the rankers. Melina, with a scrutinizing gaze and a tone betraying her skepticism, suddenly discovers that the trip between Teresa and Jinhyuk was actually a business trip rather than a date as she had thought. Teresa smiled gently, confirming the truth but still full of excitement as she recalled the interesting experiences, showing that she didn't care about titles, only that the moment was truly enjoyable. With a cheerful tone, Teresa reminisced about how the two of them wrecked the strange entertainment area in the tower as if it were a battle to release the long-suppressed frustration. Melina silently looked at Teresa, quietly thinking about the unhealed wounds from the incident in Beijing, where Teresa had nearly collapsed amid the fierce battle. A humorous comparison arose from Melina when she realized Teresa seemed increasingly like Jinhyuk, someone who vents stress through violence yet maintains an enigmatic aura. Teresa denied it adorably, but her eyes lit up as she recalled the trip to the tower's entertainment area, where she unexpectedly sensed a deep part of Jinhyuk's inner self. Although Jinhyuk had a reputation for being selfish and brutal, Teresa admitted he always attracted wonderful people, from allies to rivals, all drawn by his special charisma. She smiled softly, seemingly beginning to understand the reason behind that attraction, something that cannot be explained by ordinary logic but felt through shared experiences. From the very first moment she met Jinhyuk, Teresa felt herself drawn into a world full of roses and danger, where reason and emotion always coexisted in sweet chaos. From their earliest encounters, Kang Jinhyuk always made those around him clearly feel the confident aura radiating from him, even though he never needed to speak to show it. Even in the tensest moments, quietly observing the situation with his teammates, Jinhyuk maintained an astonishing calmness, as if everything was already within his plan. Whether on a brutal battlefield or amidst the ruins, Jinhyuk always knew exactly what to do. He never hesitated or wavered, something that earned others deep respect. That decisiveness did not come from luck but was part of Jin Hyuk's nature. He walked with a confident smile as if every challenge was just a small game in his eyes. She looked at him, her eyes shining with emotion. Amidst chaos and pressure, the image of Jin Hyuk remained deeply imprinted in her mind as someone irreplaceable. Although she cherished the time spent beside him, it was precisely because of that her inner worry grew as she felt those moments becoming increasingly rare. The slight smile at the corner of her lips could not hide her true feelings, a gentle regret for the time past when only the two of them journeyed together. Amid the peaceful cityscape, she looked up at the sky and sighed softly. Now, Jin Hyuk had been drawn into so many relationships and responsibilities that he no longer had time just for her. The red-haired woman sitting opposite couldn't help but smile in admiration. Instead of jealousy, that girl simply felt sad about losing the close bond, a purity that made everyone feel at ease. As if to break the heavy atmosphere, the red-haired girl teased with a bold suggestion, but the immediate, sulky reaction of the other girl only made the conversation warmer and more lively. Teresa looked up with a bewildered gaze as she sensed something unusual had just happened, instantly reacting with the vigilance of a warrior. The afternoon sky over Amsterdam suddenly changed dramatically, the fiery red sky torn apart by countless blackbirds like a sign of an impending calamity. A rumbling sound shook the entire space. Both Teresa and Melina immediately jumped up from the table with quick reflexes in response to the sudden danger. Melina panicked amid the earth-shaking noise, murmuring in confusion about what was happening, while the ground beneath her feet began to tremble violently. Teresa, with sharp intuition, immediately sensed that this was not just an ordinary earthquake. She gritted her teeth, her eyes turning serious. Without hesitation, Teresa leapt powerfully onto the rooftop, leaving Melina behind, calling her name in astonishment. In midair, Teresa circled in a combat stance, her hair flying and eyes cold and sharp, ready to confront the unknown threat. She narrowed her gaze on the unstable energy above, her heart racing amid the chaotic scene. A question formed in her mind. What the hell is going on? Meanwhile, on the 5th floor of the Challenge Tower, the Andrea area was still under construction and no one realized that the recent tremor was about to trigger a real disaster. At the same time, a purple-haired girl full of vigor swung her sword powerfully, tearing through space with a purple sword aura signaling the arrival of a new force entering the battle. Jin Hyuk guided Andrea during their fight, his sharp eyes closely tracking every move of the opponent, teaching her how to spot openings and distract with effective feints. During a break, Jin Hyuk asked about the situation on the 5th floor where Andrea was stationed. She smiled comfortably, saying that since the higher floors opened, players causing trouble had become fewer, except for a few rare high-rankers. With fiery eyes and purple magic swirling around her hands, Andrea proudly declared she was no longer the weak girl she once was, ready to prove her true strength. Andrea unleashed her ultimate move, punishing blow, enveloping the space in blazing purple energy. She charged at Jin Hyuk with full confidence, determined to prove her growth. However, her powerful strike was quickly nullified. Jin Hyuk easily dodged and counterattacked, startling Andrea and causing her to panic for a moment. Andrea was knocked to the floor while Jin Hyuk stood beside her with a sly smile. She blankly asked how he had so easily countered such a fierce attack. Jin Hyuk silently observed her, feeling proud. Andrea had changed a lot from the petite girl he once met. Now she was a true warrior. From the balcony, he looked down at the fortified and expanded 5th floor base. He quietly decided to make this place one of his strongholds in preparation for bigger strategies. Despite losing the fight, Andrea lifted her head to look straight at Jin Hyuk with tears sparkling at the corners of her eyes. But those eyes were not weak, they held determination to keep rising. Suddenly, a voice came from behind. A white-haired girl accompanied by a tall figure approached. She coldly scolded Andrea for using a technique she had never taught, revealing her surprising identity. Teacher. Jin Hyuk watched from afar with a satisfied smile as he saw Andrea and Alice training together. Despite their contrasting personalities, the two harmonized better than he expected, accelerating Andrea's growth. Even Bellis gradually adapted to the new environment. While Alice showed irritation at Andrea's bewildered expressions, Bellis thoughtfully pointed out that the issue lay in the girl's complicated origins. Suddenly, a system notification appeared before Jin Hyuk, a video call from outside, the caller named Han Sang-jin, causing him to frown in suspicion. Jin Hyuk quickly answered the call and greeted openly. However, Mr. Han's serious expression indicated this was no mere social conversation. Mr. Han got straight to the point, stating this was an emergency call. He requested Jin Hyuk to come to the association immediately, signaling a critical situation had just occurred. In response to Han Sang-jin's warning, Jin Hyuk asked for the cause. The answer made the atmosphere heavy. In Europe, a large-scale outbreak had occurred. Through the images from the call, bizarre creatures with skull-like forms emerged from the twisted space. Deadly shadows and their screams tore through the atmosphere. Bright purple teleportation gates burned everywhere, accompanied by countless winged monsters rushing out nonstop. At least 60 gates have been detected and the number continues to rise. Han Sangjin explained this was the largest attack since the tower opened. Numerous European countries like France, the Netherlands, England, and Germany are facing a serious crisis. Gates appeared simultaneously in many areas, creating fierce waves of attacks from countless monsters. Jin Hyuk understood that a global-scale war was about to begin. On the European battlefield, national armies coordinated with local guilds to resist the sudden assault with full force. Under a rain of bullets, they held the front line against the monsters pouring out of the gates. However, conventional ammunition seemed insufficient to pierce the thick skin and protective magic of the monsters. They roared, ignoring the gunfire, continuing to charge at the defensive forces. Despite their resilience, human warriors began to falter. Monsters flooded the streets, pushing back the front lines. The risk of the defense collapsing was only a matter of time. At that moment, a wide-area skill was activated, Flamethrower. A fierce stream of fire shot across the battlefield, tearing through enemy ranks with devastating power. The raging flames engulfed the entire front area. Screams and booming explosions signaled the appearance of a powerful figure yet to be revealed. Amidst the burning scene, soldiers' astonished eyes were clear. They did not know who had acted, but the power just unleashed far exceeded human expectations. A cold female voice rang out through the smoke and fire. A brilliant magic formation appeared in midair. She declared that the soldiers' attack was meaningless, proving her superior level. The red-haired girl stood tall on the rooftop, a radiant aura of magic covering her hands. It was Maria from Guild Olympus, one of Europe's top mages. She ordered the army to retreat to focus on protecting civilians. Not only Maria, another person also joined the battle. The skill, Divinity Reinforcement, was activated, summoning a holy light. Teresa, the holy knight, charged into battle wielding a sword of light. Teresa's first slash blew away numerous monsters with divine power. The battlefield trembled, creating a new ray of hope amid the fiery chaos. Teresa turned her head with a determined gaze, responding to her teammates' signal with a decisive call. Now, Maria, the moment to counterattack had come. Maria held the blazing flame in her hands, a slight smirk on her lips, affirming she was ready to unleash a destructive strike as if to silence any urging. I'm already doing it, so don't. In a fury driven by urgency, Maria unleashed her wrath through Flamethrower, blasting the ground with a tremendous explosion. The flames rained down like meteors. After the explosion, the two warriors, Maria and Teresa, looked at each other with unspoken understanding. Two nods confirmed their well-coordinated teamwork had taken shape. Teresa, still haunted by the defeat in Beijing, was now giving her all amid the chaotic scene, a resilience worthy of recognition. Watching Teresa struggle on the battlefield, Maria smiled movedly. Deep inside, she could not hide her admiration. Truly impressive. However, a mysterious gaze observed Maria from afar. With a quiet voice and eyes shining like a demon's, that figure whispered, "It's surprising to see a high-level mage is human." A sudden strange feeling overwhelmed Maria, leaving her stunned. She couldn't explain the cold aura tightening around her mind. What is this feeling? Before she could regain composure, Maria's body was gripped tightly by a pair of giant skeletal hands radiating dark magical energy. They were draining her life force bit by bit. Finally, the one behind it all revealed himself. The glowing blue eyes of a deadly skeletal figure emitted a lethal energy. He was the true demon of this battlefield. A sudden pressure made Maria's eyes widen, a strange light flashing in her pupils. She sensed an unusual presence, forcing herself to react instinctively. From the void, an object was hurled at terrifying speed. A sharp sword carrying a fierce destructive force aimed straight at the target. The magical shield surrounding Maria instantly shattered into pieces upon impact. Her eyes opened wide, showing shock as her entire body was thrown from her position. A series of violent explosions sounded like artillery fire. The ground cracked open, buildings collapsed, and smoke and fire rose into the sky in an unstoppable chain reaction. Teresa screamed in despair as she saw Maria caught in the attack. Her voice echoed through the chaotic air, filled with worry and pain. From the darkness, a giant creature suddenly appeared right behind Teresa. As she turned, she saw a massive fist like a fortress descending straight down. The punch struck the ground with a shockwave, dust billowing up thickly, engulfing everything in dense smoke and deafening echoes. The devastated scene became clear through the dust, everything around blurred. The pressure from the blow created a fierce whirlwind that swept the battlefield clean. From the rubble, Teresa struggled to rise, her armor dented but her gaze unwavering. Though panting, she faced the enemy resolutely, silently breathing. Your body? Just as rumored. The giant monster slowly approached, eyes blazing red like burning coals. He spoke in a hoarse, threatening voice. I've been searching for you everywhere, Teresa. From within the hazy mist of deathly aura, a booming voice echoed from the realm of the dead, calling out the name, Saint Teresa Delaware Laurentia. The glowing red eyes on the skull appeared fierce, shining with vengeful light. This was the arrival of the Grand Death Knight, an immortal being summoned solely to destroy the soul he hated most. Before the terrifying presence of the Death Knight, Teresa did not flinch. She clenched her jaw, her eyes shining with resilience. In the destructive wind that tore everything apart, her blonde hair flew wildly, but her heart was as solid as a rock. She understood this battle was not just for herself, but to protect what remained after the darkness. A horde of undead monsters screamed and charged like a storm, led by armored skeletons and orange-eyed demons, signaling a fierce attack from the shadows. As the relentless assault approached, a sharp slash tore through the air, cutting across the enemy formation, causing the demon to scream in horror, realizing his comrades had been defeated in an instant. Steady footsteps echoed on the devastated ground, while two figures stepped onto the battlefield, talking as if the war was nothing serious. One of them, the blonde girl Casey, threw down a monster's corpse while lamenting memories of hunting monsters with Jinhyuk, showing deep attachment and nostalgia. Both Casey and Judro, once known as the Mad Butchers of Europe, now stood silently together amid the fiery sunset and the ruined remnants of the city. In a brief moment of silence, Casey suddenly voiced out, "Does Europe still have hope?" A question heavy with despair over the current situation. The phone suddenly rang. Casey held it to her ear while Judro leaned in curiously, both maintaining their usual indifferent expressions toward unexpected situations. Upon hearing the voice on the other end, their expressions instantly changed. Eyes brightened, mouths opened in surprise. It was Jinhyuk. On the other side of the world, Kang Jinhyuk was crossing a corridor scattered with ghosts, calmly asking, "Where are you guys?" as if everything was still under his control. Casey cheerfully shouted, "Dortmund, Germany here. The situation is chaotic, like an outbreak." The urgency mixed with the group's characteristic humor made the call lively. While Europe was in chaos, Jinhyuk called the twins Casey and Judro. His voice was calm but firm, requesting their help for an urgent upcoming mission. On the other end, the twin siblings excitedly responded to Jinhyuk's request. Judro asked in surprise, while Casey was curious to know the specific details of this favor. Without hesitation, both quickly agreed. In the blood-red sunset atmosphere, their confident and humorous promise to support Jinhyuk rang out as usual. The scene shifted to a high-rise building, the headquarters of the Awakened Association, rushing to deal with a global crisis about to spiral out of control. An electronic map appeared, showing Europe as the epicenter of the disaster. In just 3 hours, over 40,000 people had died, and communication systems across the continent were completely paralyzed. Europe's major guilds were still desperately holding on. Monsters kept pouring out from gates, making defense increasingly hopeless without reinforcements. A high-ranking official, sweat dripping from his forehead, admitted a terrifying prospect. If Europe fell, the next region would be Asia, the last center of the world's strongest awakened forces. In a packed auditorium of awakened individuals, though whispering among themselves, everyone listened intently as a clear order was given. An emergency force would be dispatched to the front lines. The association's leaders bowed deeply before the awakened, a rare gesture showing despair and final hope placed on individuals possessing superior power. Determined and responsible faces appeared. All were ready to fight, not just for a land, but for the survival of all humanity. Jinhyuk gazed solemnly ahead, eyes full of determination. In that quiet moment, he was contemplating something important, something that could affect the entire situation. His gaze grew deeper and colder. Jinhyuk's mind was gradually sinking into an unshareable plan, a great responsibility weighing heavily on his shoulders. Andrea, with a gentle smile and soft voice, inquired about Teresa, the close friend who had accompanied her through many battles. Her heart was filled with longing despite the distance between them. Jinhyuk gently stroked Andrea's head like a caring older brother, softly promising to pass on the message to Teresa. He understood that this little girl needed to feel connected and safe. Andrea beamed joyfully like a child receiving a gift. Her delighted demeanor completely contrasted with the tense atmosphere spreading outside. At the same time, Jinhyuk exchanged words with an important member, a long-eared girl with a serious appearance, who quickly realized the shocking reality. If Europe fell, Teresa surely could not remain safe. Jinhyuk, fully aware of the situation, watched Andrea briskly walk out to the training ground. He knew that her innocence was something to be preserved so she could quickly become even stronger. His companion voiced dissatisfaction, questioning whether she had to remain silent despite knowing the grave truth outside, simply because it happened beyond the tower. Jinhyuk gently but firmly confirmed. He admitted this was not something that could be solved by strength, and this time, the truth had to be sacrificed for a greater good. With a meaningful smile, Jinhyuk suggested she stay and help train Andrea instead of joining the battle, because he knew that from here, the new generation would revive humanity's future. Sylvia softly exhaled, her face calming after the exchange with Jinhyuk. She accepted the fact that she would not go to battle this time, instead taking an important role in the rear. With a confident gaze and provocative posture, Sylvia declared she would take on the work here. She reminded Jinhyuk to do what needed to be done without worrying further. As tension filled the great hall, Jinhyuk walked alone through the chaotic crowd. His eyes were resolute, but his tightly clenched hand on the phone revealed the determination rising within him. The camera zoomed in on Jinhyuk's hand gripping the phone tightly, a small gesture but one that concealed a major decision about to be made. The scene shifted to ruined Europe, where the familiar symbol, the old clock tower, now leaned amid a blood-red sky, signaling that the ominous signs had not ceased. Melina, the red-haired warrior, lay unconscious amid the rubble. Her cloak and badge remained intact, but her body could no longer endure. The battle continued fiercely. Two warriors, one light, one dark, clashed with blazing sword strikes, stirring the sunset sky. The enemy was a giant skeleton in black armor, unleashing a fierce slash with a sharp great sword, carrying devastating destructive power. The enemy swung a terrifying spinning slash, creating a blazing red arc, a sweeping attack threatening to wipe out all living beings in the area. At the peak of the threat, Teresa's divinity blade skill activated. She plunged down from above like a holy spear, ready to end the evil force below. A flurry of blows imbued with divine power rained continuously on the dry bone knight's armor, producing a series of piercing clashing sounds. Yet, frighteningly, the armor remained steadfast as if nothing could penetrate it. Teresa frowned, silently recalculating. The divine power should have inflicted great damage on the immortal enemy, but all she managed was a tiny scratch on his body. As Teresa tried to create distance, the enemy suddenly swung upward with a thunderous strike. She widened her eyes in horror, realizing the gap between them was too close to evade. In that fateful moment, a flash of despair crossed Teresa's eyes. She knew clearly her body would not escape the counterattack about to strike at an incredibly fast speed. The giant mace swung down with terrifying force from above, pressing down on Teresa like a heavy mountain, causing the ground to shake violently. The shockwave spread into a fierce explosion. Rocks shattered, dust rose to obscure the battlefield, as if the wrath of hell had just descended. As the dust gradually cleared, the figure of the dry-bone knight still stood proudly amid the rubble, his giant great sword dragging across the ash-covered ground like a deadly warning. The demon knight stepped out from the smoky haze, his glowing red eyes shining in the darkness. He sneered in a deep tone. Perhaps he did not expect Teresa to hold out this long. Teresa lay motionless among the rubble, blood seeping through her silver armor. Her sword had fallen from her hand. The knight stepped forward, slightly curling his lips. "Holy knight, such a nuisance." As he spoke, he turned his head toward the distance as if talking to someone else. The mocking question, "You see it too, don't you?" hung in the air, full of implication about a third party about to appear. A fierce swirl of dark purple energy spread, signaling the threatening arrival of a dark ruler, none other than the lion mage with an evil aura crowned on his head, appearing before the surviving ones. Cold eyes like an abyss and a voice announcing his name, Balelord Doom, instantly froze the atmosphere. That name carried the weight of authority, death, and supreme magical power. Balelord bowed his head to the fallen female knight, nodding slightly as if understanding something. He confirmed why the Murim faction urgently requested him to eliminate people like her. The danger she posed far exceeded her holy appearance. Beneath the torn armor, a dazzling light emanated from the dying girl's body. Balelord murmured praise for the pure and intense divine power she possessed, a rarity in these chaotic times. However, immediately his gaze sharpened. He sensed another power sleeping deep within her, not divine energy, but a mysterious opposing force coexisting in that body. Without hesitation, Balelord ordered his subordinates to take the girl away. He no longer kept his original promise to eliminate the target, for what he found was more valuable than death, an unknown entity with infinite potential. When reminded of the previous commitment, Balelord only gave a cold smile. With a cold gaze and indifferent tone, he declared that what they had just found was more precious than any prior agreement. He continued to order, "Take the mage girl as well." He affirmed that these girls could be used for his purposes, a living tool containing power he could not miss. As the two powerful villains departed, darkness swallowed the desolate square. But from a hidden corner, a phone in someone's hand quietly recorded the scene, missing no detail. A young couple hiding and watching had just finished recording the video. The blonde girl watched and laughed arrogantly despite knowing their opponent was overwhelmingly superior. With a teasing tone, she admitted the creatures were not something humans should confront. The photo capturing the moment the Bone Knights left with Teresa was just sent, an urgent sign clear in the decisive finger-pressing send. The blurry image revealed the backs of demons, marking the start of a forthcoming chain of events. Elsewhere, a young man's phone suddenly vibrated, signaling a new message received. The previously quiet atmosphere suddenly grew heavy as urgent news from a distant battlefield seeped into the present. The message appeared clearly on the screen. Teresa has been captured, being taken to the Amsterdam palace. Below the picture was a chilling confirmation. Those skeletons caught her. This harsh truth could not be taken lightly by the recipient. Reading the last line, the young man's eyes darkened. In that moment, silent rage arose. He muttered as a fateful declaration must be defeated by another monster. The ones who spread fear were about to face a nightmare they never expected. The sound of footsteps pounding the ground through the dusty haze signaled the arrival of a new force. In the tense and ruined atmosphere, each step carried the weight of determination and strength. For people stood firmly amidst the ruins of Amsterdam: Namgung Hyun, powerful; Wangbo Gunake, cold; Tang Soha, sharp; and Jaegal Chun, calm. They were elite martial artists sent here to restore order and bring justice to this land. Looking around the devastated city, the group of martial artists realized the horrific level of destruction caused by the demon world. Long lines of shadows in the distance, scattered corpses everywhere, creating a scene like a living hell. Tang Soha could not help but be shocked by the scene before her eyes. Strange knights wielding spears were frantically slaughtering helpless soldiers. This brutality far exceeded her imagination. Namgung Hyun frowned, questioning the choice of the Murim alliance. Meanwhile, Wangbo Gunake did not hesitate to assert that they could completely replace those soulless zombies with their true power. Namgung Hyun's eyes narrowed, filled with suspicion and discontent. He was preparing to make a sharp judgment, not to criticize, but to illuminate the truth behind this chaotic situation. The sharp words were not spoken by Hyun, but by a third party who had just appeared. That person pointed a spear at the group of martial artists, sarcastically saying that it was because they failed on the fourth floor that this world had fallen into chaos as it is now. Namgung Hyun was startled, his eyes wide open as he recognized the identity of the one who had just spoken. His face showed extreme astonishment, for that appearance was not only unexpected, but also carried an unforgettable memory. On top of the rubble, a cold female martial artist stood, with a proud demeanor and extraordinary aura. She was the first in the Murim's successor generation to reach the supreme realm, supreme peak. With a calm tone and determined eyes, Baek Seolin, the successor of the Hoasun sect, gently spoke, "Long time no see." Her reappearance signaled a major shift in the upcoming battle. Baek Seolin leaned forward, her sharp voice ringing out like a firm command. A soldier only has value when obeying orders. For her, doubt has no place on the battlefield, only acting on orders is the principle of survival. Before Seolin's absolute authority, the entire Murim group responded awkwardly and stiffly. Whether dissatisfied or embarrassed, no one dared to argue. They clearly understood the status and power of the woman before them. From the darkness melting like black mist, a deep voice sounded a greeting. The group turned their eyes toward the rubble where the ruler of this place, a dark force, was appearing. He introduced himself, Veilordum, Lord of the New Land of the Dead. With a terrifying smile and an aura of death surrounding him, he welcomed them as if boasting about his own hellish domain. In the eyes of the zombies, this ruined and death-filled scene was beautiful. They admired the battlefield as if touring a scenic spot, hiding no sick delight. Veilordum showed childlike excitement, proud of the number and variety of corpses he could summon. He was like an artist thrilled to create amid a huge collection of materials, bodies that once lived. Baek Seolin, unmoved by the spectacle, coldly interrupted. She bluntly declared that their purpose here was to confirm whether Veilordum had fulfilled his promise to cooperate as agreed. Unthreatened, Veilordum responded with boredom. In his eyes, that group was dull, not even a bit interesting for a creature living in death like him. He grasped his distinctive silver shield and revealed his hostage, Teresa de Laurentia, the Saintess. The presence of the Saintess, kept as a trophy, made the atmosphere even tenser. Veilordum sneered, boasting of his victory. He had easily subdued the Saintess. He raised the cracked shield as proof of his triumph, his tone full of arrogance and mockery. When Teresa's broken shield was lifted, Veilordum's two companions could not hide their delight. They laughed loudly as if the victory was completely theirs, without any doubt about the Saintess's death. Veilordum laughed joyfully at his subordinate's excited reaction, feeling far more satisfied than in the tense atmosphere before. For him, chaotic emotions were the spice of a ruler's power. However, contrary to the noise, the woman leading the group silently observed, her eyes cold as knives, revealing no emotion. She was not easily swayed by trivial feelings. Elsewhere, the sky trembled under the roar of engines. Military transport helicopters were advancing into the city, signaling another force about to join the battle. Inside the aircraft cabin, a voice from the communication system announced their approach to Amsterdam. However, more worryingly, all the gates connecting to Europe had fallen into enemy hands. Kim Tae-kun, head of the Awakening Association, sternly warned that this mission was a one-way journey, no retreat once they landed. A decision not meant for the hesitant. He turned to ask Kang Jin-hyuk, who carried great expectations, whether the current team was capable of completing the mission. In Tae-kun's eyes, this was a critical moment where reckless gambles were forbidden. Jin-hyuk closed his eyes briefly. Behind that calm appearance was sharp calculation. He had foreseen possible scenarios unfolding. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his lips. Jin-hyuk answered decisively as if he never doubted his own ability or that of his team, of course. Sitting together in the cabin, his three companions, each with distinct expressions, postures, and aura, clearly showed confidence. For Jin-hyuk, these four alone were enough to change the course of the war. Teresa sat with arms crossed, full of spirit, affirming that the group had overcome similar situations on the fourth floor of the Challenge Tower. Although this time was outside the tower, she maintained her fighting spirit, causing a flicker of fear among her teammates. Jin-hyuk smirked and asked the rarely proactive companion, "Why are you volunteering this time?" The sudden change made him doubt the motive behind this action. The cold companions slightly tilted their head, replying curtly, "Shut up. I do what I want," clearly showing an independent personality and an unwillingness to explain further. Kim Tae-kun seriously asked Jin-hyuk if there were any important details yet to be revealed. His eyes reflected deep concern for the team's safety before entering a no-retreat campaign. Jin-hyuk explained that the enemy was Veilordom, a powerful lich mage. With the ability to resurrect corpses, he commanded an almost infinite undead army unless the corpse supply ran out. He emphasized a key strategy, minimizing civilian casualties to reduce the number of soldiers Veilordom could summon. Simultaneously, he requested other forces to block nearby teleportation gates to isolate the battlefield. The international front quickly responded. Tankers from everywhere were converging on Central Europe by sea and land, ready to support Jin-hyuk's group in the upcoming boss raid. With eyes full of worry yet equally resilient, Kim Tae-kun wished Jin-hyuk good luck. Despite foreseeing danger, he sent sincere greetings as usual. Suddenly, the pilot screamed in terror upon spotting something unusual ahead. Fear was clearly visible on his face, signaling an emergency had just occurred. Hordes of monsters surged from all directions into the blazing red sky. In the air, flocks of bats and humanoid flying creatures fell like a waterfall. The enemy had begun to encircle the allied forces from all sides. As the monsters attacked from every direction, Han Seo-jun quickly activated his special skill, Machine King, confidently taking on the role of battlefield controller with technology and precise firepower. Under Han Seo-jun's command, the drones simultaneously opened fire, unleashing the mana bullet skill, creating waves of light bullets to block the advancing monsters. The energy bullets hit their targets with deadly accuracy, causing a series of large explosions in the sky. The enemy's vanguard was quickly annihilated in the blazing fire. However, the overwhelming number of enemies caused Seo-jun to begin to panic. Despite the combat system operating at full capacity, he could not stop them all in time, signaling that the enemy was about to close in. In a critical moment, Kang Jin-hyuk suddenly turned and called his companion, nicknamed Stalker, with a sly smile as if he already had another plan to handle the situation. Without many words, Jin-hyuk firmly instructed everyone to watch carefully. He reached out and pressed the button to open the aircraft cabin door, preparing for a bold action. The cabin door swung open, red light flooded in as Kang Jin-hyuk stepped out into the open air. All eyes in the cabin turned to him, stunned by the unexpected move. His foot stepped on the edge of the aircraft cabin, walking steadily and confidently as if performing. With a calm voice, Jin-hyuk declared, "This is how a true expert handles a situation." Amid the chaotic and dangerous sky, Jin-hyuk leapt out wearing a confident smile. The sunset light reflected through his body, painting the image of a hero entering the battlefield. Inside the cabin, Stalker was speechless witnessing Jin-hyuk's action. His face revealed shock, partly due to recklessness, partly because he could not deny Jin-hyuk was truly extraordinary. As a scream echoed through the fiery dark sky, Kang Jin-hyuk threw himself from the helicopter, disregarding danger, preparing for a decisive strike that left all witnesses breathless. As he fell freely through the air, Jin-hyuk activated two barriers in succession, one to amplify magical power, one to expand casting range. Magical light spread like overlapping circles across the red sky. Immediately, a powerful snowstorm swirled in the air, marking the activation of the Glacier Formation skill, a massive ice storm engulfing the flying monsters ahead. Surprised by the cold and magical power beyond expectation, the demons screamed in terror before their bodies froze piece by piece. The ultimate attack was triggered, Millennial Ice Jade. A cold magical explosion erupted from the center, freezing everything within a wide radius, leaving an apocalyptic scene of monsters. While falling, Jin-hyuk decisively called out Sylphide, his loyal wind spirit, as an urgent summon amid the chaos. Responding promptly and cheerfully, Sylphide appeared immediately with his signature dark glasses, ready to switch to battle mode. Kang Jin-hyuk quickly mounted Sylphide's back, joining forces with other spirits in spirit battle mode, charging toward the battlefield like a thunder god descending. From the helicopter window, the teammates could not hide their admiration witnessing Jin-hyuk's overwhelming performance. One exclaimed, both impressed and relieved, "Luckily, he's on our side." Meanwhile, from afar, a shadow wearing a hood with a skull exposed watched the entire scene in astonishment. The emotion behind his gloomy blue eyes was encapsulated in a trembling exclamation mark, a foreboding sense of doom. The immortal mage Veilordum looked at the battlefield ahead with delight as he recognized a modified magical skill, something that both surprised and greatly intrigued him. Looking up at the sky stained red by smoke and fire and the devastated scene, he realized this was a form of magic reanalysis, a breakthrough beyond the limits of conventional classical magic. Veilordum's eyes flashed with curiosity as he began to speculate the identity of the enemy, a mage capable of restructuring magical formations to a degree that made him cautious. But just as he was pondering, Kang Jin-hyuk swiftly moved like a whirlwind, seizing the opportunity to close in before Veilordum could react. Observing the overall situation, Jin-hyuk analyzed Veilordum's familiar tactics and predicted the next move the mage would choose to counter. As expected, Veilordum began summoning heavy monsters from a gigantic magical gate cracking open in the sky. From that dark purple energy zone, a violent tremor erupted as a colossal creature started emerging from the gate, a warning of an intense battle about to unfold. The full form of the summoned creature was revealed, a giant bone dragon, the ultimate deadly weapon of Veilordum stepping out from the summoning matrix. At the same time, Veilordum cast the skill View Sharing to observe the entire battlefield through the eyes of the bone dragon, preparing to leisurely enjoy the massacre. Red glowing eyes and an excited smile appeared on Veilordum's skull face as he humorously commanded, "Prepare to die," letting the bone dragon sweep away enemies with its haunting fear skill. The sky trembled as combat helicopters staggered simultaneously from an invisible pressure emanating from the ground. The sound of swirling wind howled amid threatening roars. Inside the aircraft cabin, a team member gritted his teeth in anger. Cornered and passive, he understood that if the situation did not change, the entire team would be wiped out before they could counterattack. When all hope seemed lost, a member noticed something. His eyes widened in astonishment. A familiar presence had appeared. Kang Jin-hyuk rode on the back of a flying spirit through the blazing red sky. Holding Goguma tightly in his hand, he smiled confidently and gave a brief command, "Goguma, show your power." Responding to the command, Goguma activated the skill Fear. From its eyes emitted a chilling purple aura aimed directly at the bone dragon, threatening the entire army. However, a strange phenomenon occurred. Goguma's power was blocked. The system announced that a higher-level entity's skill had nullified the attack. The bone dragon's fear vanished completely. The skull-headed mage Veilordum panicked intensely upon sensing the intervention of a divine entity. His initial confidence was replaced by terror. Meanwhile, Goguma, with big round eyes and sharp teeth, innocently shouted, "TW," adorably. The tense atmosphere was broken by the naive appearance of this small but dangerous creature. Goguma, Jin-hyuk's strange creature, unleashes the skill Fear, emitting a threatening wave with fiercely glowing eyes. The pressure from it is strong enough to shake the space ahead. However, that terrifying effect was immediately nullified. A higher-level entity intervened, causing Goguma's skill to vanish as if it had never existed. Bone Dragon, originally a high-level creature, quickly regained its composure. It stretched out and roared, its fierce momentum rising, signaling a fierce battle about to begin. The Bone Dragon's foot slammed down on the ground with terrifying force, creating a shockwave spreading across the battlefield as a clear declaration of war. Its double tail shaped like hooks whipped down powerfully, drawing deadly curves, a devastating weapon prepared to crush everything. The immortal sorcerer Veilordum was momentarily surprised. He began to doubt, how could a human control such a powerful ancient creature? At the same time, Bone Dragon's eyes flashed. It seemed to realize something too, clearly identifying the formidable enemy as the human warned about by the Murin people. The name Kong Jinhyuk echoed in the minds of those watching, and he, the confident protagonist, was ready to charge into battle without hesitation. Jin Hyuk's decisive footsteps echoed with strong clunk sounds as he entered the aircraft, the start of a sudden counterattack. Immediately after, a teammate also rushed out of the aircraft, sword in hand, expression full of determination, showing that this fight would no longer be one-sided. With a resolute face, the young man shouted loudly as he dashed through the air, unafraid of the looming power. The fighting spirit in his eyes burned like an eternal flame. At the critical moment, a mysterious spirit bird appeared amid blue light, catching him precisely. With just a light touch, his body stabilized on the bird's back, beginning a counterattack from the sky. From behind, Jin Hyuk casually teased upon seeing his teammate struggle. Not bad, huh? The provocation made the opponent unable to hold back, shouting angrily and deciding not to give up. Though boastful, standing on the spirit bird made him realize the difficulty. Keeping balance was already a challenge, let alone fighting. That thought was clear in his eyes as they darted nervously from instability. The situation grew more urgent. Jin Hyuk immediately ordered Yanawa and Taemin to advance forward, leaving the rear for himself to handle. Inside the cabin, both responded with determined eyes and trusting nods. From afar, the air whistled sharply as giant wings flapped. A massive shadow swept across the fiery red sky, signaling the arrival of the ruler, descending onto the battlefield. The dry-bone spirit full of deadly aura was rising. Its blazing red wings flapped strongly, spine trembling and pulsing as if alive, signaling an impending attack. The monster's fury was unleashed. A roaring sound thundered across the sky, accompanied by oppressive pressure making the entire space feel suffocating. Faced with overwhelming power, one in the group blurted out doubtfully, "Are we really going to defeat it?" But Jin Hyuk maintained his strategy, emphasizing they couldn't waste mana because the real enemy was still ahead. Balor Doom. Without wasting time, Jin Hyuk shouted the first command, "Draw its attention first." Immediately after, both dashed on the spirit bird and summoned beast, beginning a risky distraction plan. In a lightning-fast attack, Jin Hyuk's sword swung powerfully, slashing along the giant bone dragon's body, leaving a dazzling streak of light and spraying black blood. The slash carried both momentum and top-tier skill, proving the superiority of its wielder. Soaring through the fiery red sky, Balor Doom, a gigantic black-armored creature with magnificent wings, slowly emerged among the circling helicopters as if declaring its absolute dominance over this combat zone. Balor Doom's blazing red eyes flashed against the sunset sky, radiating deadly menace as it turned its head, precisely identifying the one who had just provoked it with the recent attack. Struck by the attack and enraged by the provocation, Balor Doom roared and plunged straight down toward where Jin Hyuk was flying, creating a powerful wave as if tearing the sky apart. Jin Hyuk watched the scene and simply smiled, success. While the aerial battle raged fiercely, another corner of the Amsterdam Royal Palace witnessed the appearance of the defense forces. The red sky seemed to signal a terrible calamity about to descend upon this place. The skill Complete Sharing was activated, increasing the range of thought sharing among members. At that moment, Casey was bombarded with calls from teammates and reacted irritably while concentrating. "What?" Among the crowd of skeletal soldiers, one member complained about a skeleton beside him staring intently. Another casually replied, "Don't worry, it won't notice." After observing for a while, the group disguised with bone masks confirmed the effectiveness of their camouflage. They had not been detected. "You're right, they're all empty-headed fools," they joked as they walked. In another area, Teresa, the resilient female warrior, had collapsed, her body covered in dust and blood. Though unconscious, her aura still radiated strongly as if gathering energy for something. She knelt within a magic circle, her hands bound by glowing magic, but Teresa's eyes did not lose their fire. The magical aura around her began to fluctuate intensely, a sign that she was about to awaken. Following Jin Hyuk's guidance, Casey and Judro finally discovered Teresa, tightly bound by sealing magic. However, right in front of her stood a giant Death Knight, making any approach impossible under current conditions. Casey silently assessed the situation, knowing well that with that Death Knight standing guard, they had no chance to approach Teresa stealthily. The bone defenses were so strong and sharp that any sneaky move would be immediately detected. As expected, the Death Knight's demon-red eyes fixed directly on them. Judro began to panic, suspecting they had been exposed. Although Casey tried to reassure him that undead weren't smart, those eyes seemed to look straight into their souls. Judro's anxiety became reality as the Death Knight started moving toward them. The ground trembled with each heavy step. Despite Casey's denial, the tense atmosphere was suffocatingly intense. Judro couldn't shake off his unease as the Death Knight approached. Casey coldly dismissed him, saying he was overly sensitive and that they only attracted attention because they looked better than the usual skeleton soldiers. Their awkward humor turned ridiculous when they realized the Death Knight was staring at them from close range. The gaze full of suspicion and killing intent froze them in place. The Death Knight's stare was soon confirmed by action. He gritted his teeth, drew his sword, and coldly uttered, "I smell rats." The nightmare officially began. Needing no further warning, both Casey and Judro screamed and fled without hesitation. The Death Knight immediately pursued, swinging his great sword and sweeping everything in his path with a fierce roar. Amid the chaos, Jin Hyuk's team immediately took off. The flying knights on their spirit beasts dashed across the battlefield like streaks of white and black light, preparing for a sudden counterattack from above. With sharp eyes and absolute focus, Jin Hyuk activated the skill, Enhanced Sword Aura. Blue sword energy exploded alongside a lightning slash, marking the start of his fierce attack to rescue Teresa. As the black dragon lunged forward with compressed magic in its mouth, a swift slash from Jin Hyuk struck, shattering the monster's magical armor with a resounding shatter, signaling a shift in the battle. Jin Hyuk was still not satisfied. While launching the attack, he scolded his teammates for wasting mana, believing they would need it for the upcoming fierce battle. However, an immediate retort came, "Then how do you plan to kill it?" A calm voice rose amid the argument. The young teammate suggested that Jin Hyuk's impatience in fighting was his weakness, implying he lacked an overall strategy. Jin Hyuk was momentarily startled by the comment, but the other continued firmly, "It's all about timing." The brief words contained a bold plan gradually unfolding. Not wasting the opportunity, the young man leapt into the air, leading the charge with a shout, "Follow me," initiating a daring move that drew the dragon in pursuit. The black dragon roared wildly as it chased the two figures through a magical vortex in midair, signaling the start of a breathtaking pursuit. In the sky, the young man smirked and pointed toward the swirling space gate, the place the dragon had just emerged from, then declared, "We're going straight in there." Without hesitation, both fell freely like arrows toward the space gate. Jin Hyuk shouted into the wind, "We're going in," while the other added, "Hold on tight." Jin Hyuk's eyes widened in shock as he realized his teammate's intention. Did he really want to slam the dragon into the ground to finish it? A crazy, seemingly hopeless plan. But as the bodies of all three, including the giant dragon, passed through the glowing purple gate, all thoughts in Jin Hyuk's mind were swept away by the swirling wind. The next battle had begun. Jinwoo dashed without hesitation into the space gate, where the fierce dragon head swirled, carrying decisive will and cold eyes as if everything had been calculated. The dragon was sucked into the space gate's pull and roared furiously while its massive body slammed violently, creating a sound that shook the entire battlefield. Roaring madly, the dragon struggled in chaos as its body was gradually pulled into the gate, yet it still could not escape the invisible blade waiting. At that moment, Jiwoo summoned a special skill, a magic shield that increased casting speed. The magical light swirling around his arm revealed the next step in the cunning plan. The system confirmed the effect, indicating Jinwoo's casting speed had increased by 200%, allowing him precise control over when the gate would close. At the same time, the dragon's body was pulled into the center of the magical space, where a fierce purple lightning burst with a dry snap, like scissors cutting off life. The massive dragon's body crashed onto the ground with a deep THOM, and the system screen immediately displayed a notification: Ji-woo had leveled up. Goguma, the small but loyal summoned creature, licked its lips in satisfaction after the battle, its eyes sparkling as it sensed the lingering taste of victory in the air. As a reward, Jinwoo crossed his arms beside the giant dragon's head, smiling as he allowed Goguma to enjoy the head as a post-battle meal. The teammate could only give a wry smile upon realizing Jinwoo's entire plan was to time the gate's closure perfectly to swallow the dragon, a crazy but flawless tactic. After the fierce battle, Jin Hyuk and his teammates stepped through the rubble. Although smoke and war remnants still lingered around, their eyes were fixed forward toward the identified center of the enemy's territory. Jin Hyuk looked up at the sign in Dam Square in Amsterdam. Although the teleportation gate brought them closer to the target, the distance to the palace was still far, meaning the journey was not over yet. The silent atmosphere was broken by a straightforward remark from a companion, a brief but meaningful compliment on Jin Hyuk's recklessness and calculation. From the black smoke emerged a bizarre skeletal creature. With unexpected enthusiasm, he praised Jin Hyuk's skill in infiltrating the territory on the very first attempt. With an unbelievable nostalgic expression, the skeleton recalled memories of his past as a human. He even laughed emotionally as if remnants of humanity still lingered after death. Without waiting for another word, the skill, Enhanced Sword Aura, was activated. The companion's sharp slash tore through the air, aiming straight at the enemy amid the dramatic monologue. With decisive attitude, the man charged like an invisible blade. Giving the opponent no chance to react, he delivered a cold and precise finishing blow. His sharp eyes suddenly narrowed, showing sudden alertness. Something about the lich made the man pause. Perhaps the previous attack was not enough to defeat him. The slash only made the lich laugh. With a sarcastic and mocking tone, he showed no harm and even complained about the lack of romance in the current world, attacking a lich while he was reminiscing. The true identity of this creature was revealed: Balelord Doom, a former brilliant sorcerer, now a level 91 lich. With a series of dark magic skills and special conditions to copy his power, the challenge for Jinhyuk had officially begun. Jinhyuk calmly pointed out the true nature of the enemy, that what he faced was only a magical clone, not the real body. His glowing red eyes analyzed in detail the opponent's ineffective attack method. Jinhyuk continued explaining that all physical attacks were useless unless aimed at the true form. Upon hearing this, the teammate beside him could not hide his discomfort, realizing they faced the most troublesome type of enemy. Jinhyuk's cold assessment shocked the enemy, a skeletal lich. He did not expect the opponent to see through his disguise trick after just one encounter. Pretending to be weak, the lich began acting, trembling and complaining while trying to hide his embarrassment. Despite the dramatic act, neither of the two warriors opposite him was swayed. Jinhyuk's teammate immediately ordered reinforcements to be summoned. Knowing the situation could become chaotic, he quickly signaled the others to join the battle to gain the upper hand. Right after the command, the Murim warriors group appeared full of momentum. Each carried a distinct fighting aura, ready to coordinate against the high-level lich threatening them. Amid the echoes of the upcoming battle, a silent step sounded, signaling the arrival of another character. Without words, a single step made the atmosphere tense. A woman with cold pink eyes appeared, exuding a chilling and authoritative aura. Her gaze seemed to pierce everything, preparing to intervene in the battle with an unclear but threatening role. In France, as the sunset dyed the sky red, military helicopters cut through the tense atmosphere, flying swiftly towards the battlefield, signaling a large-scale landing was about to take place. Inside the cockpit, a strong punch echoed. The warrior's gloved hand, covered in spikes, slammed down on the control panel, signaling readiness for the campaign. Baek Jinho, leader of the 3rd Assault Team of Guild Dangun, laughed confidently as he commented on the fiery spirit of his comrades beside him. Jang Yoonseok, captain of the 2nd Assault Team of Guild Dangun, appeared with a sly smile. Baek Jinho teased his past of partying as a way to boost his comrades' morale. Jang Yoonseok responded with a mature gaze, affirming that he had abandoned a complicated life to live more simply, while the silhouette of a battle beast silently watched from behind. Baek Jinho smiled contentedly, approving Yoonseok's change. In his eyes, it was a sign of a mature warrior, ready for the fierce battle ahead. The helicopter doors opened and the two captains rushed down to the battlefield at extreme speed, like two spears tearing through the blazing red sky. Their landing caused the ground to explode in a red light burst, creating a shockwave that left the surrounding monsters unable to react in time. Standing amid swirling smoke with fiery red eyes, Baek Jinho clenched his fist tightly, radiating murderous intent. His battle, direct and fierce, had begun. The skill Beast's Roar was activated. For 30 seconds, all enemies within range were forced to attack Jinho, while his defense increased significantly, turning him into a living shield for his teammates. As the battle turned chaotic, humanity began to counterattack. Baek Jinho boldly charged into the undead horde, his eyes blazing and his powerful punches emitting destructive force, symbolizing an unyielding will. Across Europe, players were rapidly deployed. Regardless of borders or nationality, they voluntarily risked their lives to protect lands that were not theirs. Jang Yoonseok did not stand aside either. The sword in his hand swung in a storm, cutting down invaders' bodies, symbolizing the resilient fighting spirit for humanity. Though not natives, they fought to the end to repel the monsters threatening civilization. Blood was spilled, but human will never succumbed. Meanwhile, the enemy no longer underestimated this resistance. The undead army led by skeletal warriors began organizing formations, signaling that the real battle was about to start. And behind the curtain, the Lich Lord, supreme ruler of the undead, opened his blazing red eyes wide. He began to realize the true threat from humans and planned a stronger counterattack. Before the human warriors, a massive dark group appeared. Familiar shadows emerged one by one, led by an undead mage with extraordinary power. The Lich Lord coldly retreated, leaving the entire massacre to his subordinates. "I will entrust them to you," he said before disappearing to carry out his true plan of destruction. As the leader withdrew, a mocking laugh rang out. One of the Lich's warriors, with an arrogant appearance and tied-up hair, showed excitement at joining the fight. He turned to Cheon Yuzeong, who had been defeated by him before, recalling past defeat as a provocation. In response, Yuzeong's eyes grew cold, silent rage rising like a smoldering fire waiting to ignite. One of the four who had suffered a crushing defeat on the fourth floor suddenly appeared, laughing arrogantly as he mocked Cheon Yuzeong. He did not hesitate to bring up old humiliations, mentioning how their base was blown away in an instant. The black-haired man continued to taunt, laughing gleefully as if reliving the opponent's nightmare. His mocking words about the Namgung clan were repeated teasingly, as if deliberately provoking a psychological battle. Immediately, Cheon Yuzeong shouted in rebuttal, trying to deny the slander. Anger flared when the giant tree and fleeing were mentioned, causing Sylvia beside him to also lose control and curse him as a cunning petty man. In response to the criticism, Jinwoo narrowed his eyes dangerously, smirking provocatively. Under his fiery gaze and cold smile, he mocked the other group's messiness for leaving behind a chaotic scene. At that moment, a new member appeared on the opposing side, Baek Xiaolin, a young warrior with a cold demeanor. Jiwoo immediately activated his analysis panel, revealing her formidable combat information from the Wasan faction, notable for numerous swordsmanship skills. The skill-copying condition for Baek Xiaolin appeared. Jiwoo needed to force her to use all her techniques while dodging them for 5 minutes. Only then could he copy one skill from her, a risky but worthwhile challenge. Jinwoo's memory briefly flashed back to a conversation with the old lion, who revealed that the Murim forces were secretly preparing a major plan. Baek Xiaolin's presence here proved it. The Wasan faction had truly entered the fray. As the tension escalated, Cheon Yuzeong turned his back toward the battlefield, issuing tactical orders. He told Jiwoo to let him handle this place and quickly pursue the leader Baelord Doom. Without looking back, Yuzeong spoke quietly but firmly that Jiwoo understood magic better than anyone among them, and stopping the mastermind required intelligence more than mere strength. Nevertheless, Jinwoo still showed concern. He glanced at the dense enemy crowd ahead and asked Yuzeong a simple but weighty question. "It's really crowded there. Are you okay?" Cheon Yuzeong slightly curled his lips, a cold smile appearing clearly as a sign that a fight was about to begin. No words were needed, just an expression was enough to show confidence and eagerness to fight. With burning determination in his eyes, Cheon Yuzeong shouted loudly and charged straight into the enemy horde. For him, this was not danger, but a great opportunity to practice swordsmanship on a real battlefield. Responding to Yuzeong's call, the protagonist nodded with full trust. He quickly turned and ran off, leaving the battle to his comrades and heading toward the bigger target, Baelord Doom. Teslan roared angrily upon seeing his opponent turn away. He could not accept being ignored in the middle of battle, especially by someone who had humiliated him before. But immediately after, Teslan's eyes widened in shock. Something unexpected had just happened, leaving him unable to react. Was it speed or an attack? Cheon Yuzeong suddenly appeared at lightning speed, launching an extremely powerful attack that his opponent could not dodge. The sword's flash cut through the air, sparks flying from their clash. Yuzeong's next strike defeated his opponent with a strong airborne sword slash. The shockwave created a roaring sound, cracking the ground beneath the fallen foe's feet. Teslan was slammed hard to the ground, his body losing balance. Even as he tried to get up, he could not hide his embarrassment and collapse under the overwhelming counterattack. The protagonist walked decisively, ignoring the screams behind him. He let no one block his path and coldly warned, "Don't think about chasing unless you want to be crushed." With his palm gripping the sword hilt tightly, Cheon Yuzeong whispered like an oath. The only one allowed to chase and confront that opponent was himself. Cheon Yuzeong, eyes blazing with determination, activated the skill, Desperate Resolve. As energy enveloped his sword, he roared, declaring himself the only one entitled to face the enemy, knowing that the increased power would come at the cost of reduced defense. Sensing the unfavorable situation, Baek Xiaolin retreated and coldly ordered her teammates to counterattack. Though she did not yet fully respect the opponent, she maintained a calm demeanor as if everything was under control. As the attack order was given, the remaining members simultaneously charged toward Cheon Yuzeong. Figures leapt forward, weapons ready, prepared to overwhelm him with a rain of deadly strikes. Surrounded on all sides, Cheon Yuzeong did not retreat. He spun around, swinging his sword in a continuous defensive sequence. Flashes of light sparked between the slashes, signaling the confrontation had entered its fiercest phase. Amid the blue sword light, Cheon Yuzeong continued to brace himself. The relentless clangs echoed, not only showing the intensity of the attack but also the indomitable will of an outsider standing against a formidable formation. During the intense battle, Baek Xiaolin's gaze remained fixed. Though an outsider, she could not help but be surprised by Cheon Yuzeong's fierce fighting spirit, a man daring to fight alone to the very end. Then she chuckled quietly. Under the sunset glow, Bexialen's face revealed amusement. She admitted, though unspoken, that the man truly possessed a spirit she had not expected. Meanwhile, on the distant battlefield, zombies and mutated creatures began to invade. The howling sounds mixed with dragging footsteps signaled a new wave of attack approaching. Without needing a reminder, Jinhyuk dashed forward like an arrow piercing the wind. His cold eyes focused all his spirit on the target ahead. A swift extermination awaited his action. A fierce burst of fire erupted as Jinhyuk activated Element of Fire. His strike swept across the battlefield, turning enemies to ashes in a sea of flames, resulting in an explosion that shook the entire area. Flames blazed fiercely behind him, but the protagonist did not hesitate. He used the explosion's momentum to shoot forward like a streak of light, his body cutting through smoke and fire. Wasting no time, he immediately adjusted his flight path, spinning midair. His determined eyes aimed toward the source of the dark energy. Facing the city shrouded in darkness, he silently confirmed that evil energy was surely where Teresa was imprisoned. His intuition and their bond could not be wrong. A massive leap powered by light energy was triggered. He flew past buildings like a red lightning bolt, filled with worry. Would he arrive in time to prevent the tragedy? His foot landed on the edge of a rooftop. The strong, decisive landing shattered bricks, propelling him into the next maneuver. Power exploded beneath his step like thunder striking the ground. Debris scattered wildly, creating a spreading effect like the aftershock of a devastating blow. Under the blazing red sky, he ran relentlessly, his mind heavy with a haunting question. Was Teresa gradually being corrupted by that energy? He could not allow that to happen. Teresa was in intense pain. Her body trembled, sweat pouring as blue lightning surrounded her densely like chains binding her soul. She struggled against the corrosive energy engulfing her. Her face was full of agony, but her eyes still burned with a desire to live. The power of light still smoldered within her chest. A skeleton wearing a dark crown, its eyes glowing eerie blue, gripped Teresa with crackling electric hands. He sneered, his cruel words ringing out, "How much longer can you endure?" While Teresa was still struggling against the evil energy enveloping her body, the cold dark mage warned that her resistance only made the corruption process more severe. He began to lose patience and showed eagerness for the impending outcome. With eyes blazing with madness, the mage did not hide his excitement at about to defile a noble holy knight. Despite the troublesome interferences, he regarded breaking Teresa's spirit as the greatest prize. Before the fiery silhouette of evil energy, Teresa braced herself against the invasion, but the enemy did not relent. He continued to tempt her with sweet and dangerous words, urging her to open her heart to accept the darkness gradually consuming her. The desperate call of Miss Teresa echoed amid the waves of black energy. Teresa nearly collapsed, her body trembling and the light of faith in her eyes fading before the violent grip of the dark force tightening around her. At the peak of tension, another demon general appeared and called out the name of the one manipulating Teresa, Balelord Doom. He showed annoyance at being interrupted while fully focused on performing the corruption ritual. The demon general reported that they had lost track of the rats, referring to Teresa's teammates hiding somewhere. Doom's eyes revealed displeasure as he began to realize something was approaching at a dangerous speed. In heavy silence, Balelord Doom turned to observe the distant sky. The enemy's presence was clear, and everything he had painstakingly concealed could collapse at any moment. Teresa still knelt on the battlefield, chained by Doom's bony hand. He coldly asserted that the plan had been exposed and the saboteurs would surely appear at any time. Aware of the threat, Doom pulled out an ancient magical artifact, the Black Dice, a magical item capable of amplifying power or activating a cunning defense mechanism. He ordered it to be handed over to his subordinate. Without hesitation, the demon general took the dice and conveyed clear orders: mobilize more troops and strengthen defenses. The real battle was drawing very near. Teresa gasped and collapsed after a series of magical tortures while the Lich quietly gave an indifferent but cold order. He wanted to bring someone else to him, as if the next step in the plan was already set. He emphasized that this person was the human mage they had previously captured, causing Teresa to flinch. Unease flashed in her eyes as she realized the enemy's next target. Teresa looked up, her eyes brightening with worry and confusion. Her face reflected the fear of being forced to witness someone she knew fall into the mire of torture and manipulation just like herself. The Lich Lord stood before her, his massive shadow looming, his gloomy eyes emanating from deep sockets as if scrutinizing every remaining sign of resistance in the mind of a righteous knight. A close-up of his eyes revealed a cold yet mesmerizing gaze, like a cruel verdict passed after observation, a calm coldness carrying a foreboding sense of impending doom. Then he silently concluded, she still needs to be persuaded a little more. Teresa glared in panic at the dark intent about to befall that innocent mage. The battle erupted between factions. Cheon Yuziang and his teammates fiercely confronted the assassin group, each slash and block radiating deadly intent amidst the ruined city. The man in red launched a sudden spear attack, charging at his opponent like a wild beast, while the cloaked figure reacted swiftly with cold eyes, raising his weapon in defense. The two blades clashed violently, creating a powerful shockwave. All three warriors were caught in the collision's epicenter, sending sparks flying everywhere. Cheon Yuziang's eyes lit up as the blue sword in his hand sliced through the air with force. The special technique was activated, soul-chasing sword. A spectacular scene unfolded as Cheon Yuziang performed the soul-chasing sword dance, generating dozens of sword energy trajectories crisscrossing the battlefield like deadly ribbons. One enemy swordsman stepped back, sweating in panic upon realizing that Cheon Yuziang had doubled his strength since their last encounter on the 4th floor of the challenge tower. Another mysterious foe, both admiring and swinging his sword, was astonished that an outsider like Cheon Yuziang could wield the soul-chasing sword technique which belonged to his sect. Relentless, the red-clad figure with cat ears charged directly at Cheon Yuziang. Their swords sparked fiercely in a close-quarters duel full of speed and deadly intent. During their intense fight, the man in red couldn't help but admire Cheon Yuziang's swordsmanship, simple yet nearly perfect in precision with every movement. While moving deftly, the enemy sneered, calling Cheon Yuziang's name and taunting him mockingly. Did someone like him truly desire to perfect his sword skills further? Cheon Yuziang suddenly turned his head, sensing an unusual aura. His eyes flashed with alertness, a sign that something was about to happen. Immediately he dashed forward, his decisive footsteps echoing in the tense air. He had made his choice. In front of Yuziang, the Murim arrivals stood in formation. The atmosphere between them was thick like before a storm. He spoke, "What do you mean?" The proud female swordsman smiled, offering an enticing invitation. She sensed the power hunger from his sword and wanted to bring him to Murim. She stepped closer, promising to introduce Yuziang to the creator of the soul-chasing sword technique. Such an offer was an irresistible temptation for any swordsman. The thought of becoming stronger quietly repeated in Yuziang's mind. He stood contemplative among those who could be allies or enemies. The thought of becoming stronger quietly repeated in Yuziang's mind. He stood contemplative among those who could be allies or enemies. Yuziang drew his sword, his gaze cold. He bluntly refused, declaring that if he followed them now, it would hinder others from rescuing the Saintess. The female swordsman smiled with delight, her eyes filled with interest. Meanwhile, another member showed visible anger. The decision by Yuziang sparked mixed reactions. At that moment, a huge explosion sounded at the front line. Flames and smoke rose fiercely, signaling that fierce fighting was still ongoing on the other side of the battlefield. Amidst a sea of monsters shrouded in darkness, Ji-woo gritted his teeth and swung his sword down hard. His strike tore through the air, reflecting the iron wool burning in his eyes. Without hesitation, Ji-woo charged forward like an arrow. Ahead of him stood the giant black-armored boss waiting, surrounded by hundreds of furious undead. The boss raised his hand, a bizarre black-purple dice glowing intensely. The system's voice announced, "Black dice has been activated," signaling the start of a dangerous and unpredictable power. A brilliant purple war elephant symbol appeared in the air, emitting strange energy. The effect of black dice had been selected. The enemy was about to face something beyond expectation. Ji-woo immediately felt an unusual magical force surge through his body. His eyes widened, his face showing astonishment. He understood that something extremely dangerous was happening. The ground beneath Ji-woo cracked with a thunderous sound. A massive force like a divine strike knocked him down, creating shockwaves spreading across the battlefield. He gritted his teeth, eyes still fixed on the spinning dice. It was Baylord Doom's favorite treasure, black dice, an item capable of reversing the entire battle with a single roll. Jin-woo regained his balance, his gaze cold. He knew he couldn't let the opponent continue controlling the situation, and he would not allow it to happen again. In the sky, the lights of 3 helicopters shone directly onto the battlefield. The boss still tightly held the black dice, seemingly preparing for an even bigger move. From above, a female warrior descended like a meteor. Her blazing spinning kick carried fierce, killing intent aimed straight at the enemy, marking the arrival of a powerful new ally. Yanawa struck down with a stormy kick from midair, delivering full force to the armored beast's head, cracking the ground beneath under the tremendous pressure of her falling gale kick skill. Caught off guard, the monster still tightly gripped the strange black dice in its hand. The purple light from the object flickered as if preparing to launch a dangerous counterattack. Immediately after Yanawa's strike, the gravitational force field surrounding the area was instantly nullified. The space trembled, rocks shattered, releasing all previous suppression. Jin-hyuk smiled with relief, looking at Yanawa with admiration. In that brief moment, he acknowledged the perfect coordination from his teammate. The beast, enraged by being overwhelmed, roared furiously. It clenched the glowing black dice on its chest and hissed with hatred at Yanawa, preparing to counterattack. Surprised by the enemy's attack speed, Yanawa stepped back, dodging a slash from a black sword burning with ominous energy. She quickly responded with a sharp slash, undeterred. Under pressure, the monster activated the black dice again. This time, the symbol of a fierce lion glowed intensely on its hand, signaling a new type of summoning. From the light emerged a giant fiery lion charging straight at Yanawa. The heat radiated, making the space ahead seem ablaze. Yanawa screamed in confusion and fear. The lion's fire burned everything around, and she began to feel the heat spreading over her body, exceeding her control limits. At that moment, the Mechanical King skill was activated. A giant battle tank rose from the flames, tossing aside nearby objects and carrying fierce destructive power. The teammate wearing headphones smiled provocatively, placing his hand on the newly deployed glowing shield. He asked Yanawa arrogantly, as if boasting about an unprecedented strategic card. Yanawa only responded with a smirk, ready to face the coming battle. Yanawa gave her all, shouting for Jin-hyuk to find Teresa immediately. Knowing the threat ahead was too strong, she decided to hold the boss with her teammates so Jin-hyuk could complete a more important mission. Jin-hyuk immediately responded to the order. His face showed seriousness as he realized the mission's importance. Without looking back, he ran straight into the deadly hail of bullets. On the smoky runway, Jin-hyuk noticed the undead swarming toward him. Every step he took was blocked by moving shadows, all sharing a common goal: to prevent him from reaching Teresa. In a moment, Jin-hyuk realized the bitter truth. Baelor Doom was deliberately stalling time by sending undead to block his path. He laughed wickedly from afar, as if he had anticipated all of Jin-hyuk's plans. Clenching his teeth, Jin-hyuk suppressed his rising anger. His eyes blazed with determination as he faced the pressured situation. He knew he needed a turning point immediately. Unable to hold back, Jin-hyuk shouted into the air. He declared his willingness to do anything they asked as long as they stepped forward to help at this critical moment. As soon as Jin-hyuk's call ended, flying skulls whizzed overhead and fell to the ground. The sharp clashing sounds signaled the arrival of unexpected allies. The final reinforcements had come. From above, Casey and Judro descended heroically. They laughed and shouted, reminding Jin-hyuk of their promise that if they helped him, they would live together. Their relationship had now shifted from a deal to trust. At the decisive moment, Casey's hand was firmly grasped by Jin-hyuk. That handshake was not only a lifeline but also a vow that no one would be left behind in this battle. In a whirlwind of twin scythes, the duo unleashed the spinning twin scythe move, spinning rapidly to cut through the ranks of undead, forming a sharp protective circle around the rear line. Seizing the opportunity, they maintained their stance. With burning determination in their eyes, they shouted in unison, "Go, Jin-hyuk," transmitting full trust to their teammate charging forward. Elsewhere, a skeleton-shaped monster spoke coldly, asserting that human nature was weak and easily swayed by emotions, a psychological attack before mental torture. Facing him was Teresa, eyes brimming with tears but shining with defiance. She was forced to hear tormenting words, that her weakness caused her to suffer pain on behalf of others. Teresa's heart trembled witnessing the horrific scene, her important teammate hanging upside down, tightly bound by death magic under the cruel enemy's control. The Black Lightning skill was activated. Black thunderous electricity erupted, striking the victim with destructive power. The agonized scream echoed, tearing through the night and crushing the hearts of onlookers. Teresa screamed in despair, tears uncontrollable. The shout stop was all she could do, though she knew it was powerless against the horror unfolding. The cold demon stared directly at her, cruelly declaring, "This pain is because you are weak." Under the blue lightning, he continued torturing her body and mind, blaming her own helplessness. His merciless tone spared no mercy. "It's all your fault." He tormented Teresa with guilt, making her believe that if she were stronger, none of this tragedy would have happened. Ending his brutal psychological attack, he sealed it with a mental curse. "All you can do is watch and cry as your friends die one by one before your eyes." Jin-hyuk's face was full of rage, but time was running out. The skeletal sorcerer pressed the psychological assault, emphasizing a harsh truth. Teresa, despite her fighting spirit, was not strong enough to protect anyone. She was trapped between chains while he was surrounded by dark demonic energy. A dark liquid oozed from the sorcerer's body and began spreading across the ground, signaling a dark ritual reaching its climax, ready to engulf the weak who could not resist. The dark poison had reached Teresa. It dripped onto her face, marking the beginning of corruption, a darkness invading both body and mind. Teresa's body began to transform. Her eyes lost their light, her skin gradually turned purple-gray, and the system immediately notified signs of corruption had appeared. Medusa's body collapsed to the ground with a heavy sound. She was defeated, no longer able to resist, now merely a pawn exploited in the sorcerer's plan. His face lit up terrifyingly as he declared that the door in Teresa's heart had opened. The spiritual collapse was the moment when the soul was most easily taken over. From Teresa's perspective, the sorcerer approached with hands full of dark purple energy. Meanwhile, Jinhyuk was risking everything, charging through the undead, desperate to arrive in time. Seeing the scene before him, Jinhyuk gritted his teeth in fury. He clearly understood he was late and had to race against time to save his important teammate. The dry bony finger touched Teresa's forehead. At that moment, Jinhyuk could only scream silently in his mind. "I've come too late," powerless before a ritual being completed. Teresa screamed in excruciating pain. A wave of magical energy erupted, signaling the corruption process was complete. The sorcerer raised his hand, controlling her like a new puppet in his grasp. The savior saint, once shining in the darkness, now lost control of herself. The dark energy consumed her reason, plunging her into the abyss of corruption. A pillar of pitch-black energy exploded from the corrupted body, shattering the atmosphere and ravaging the battlefield. Those nearby, before understanding what happened, were swept into the chaotic storm. As the black storm rose, fighting groups also had to halt. The sudden transformation shocked everyone, the truth no one dared believe was happening right before their eyes. The skeletal sorcerer smiled with satisfaction. Everything had gone according to his plan. The crack in the saint's heart had now become a wide-open gateway for darkness to enter. Before Jinhyuk, a dark female figure slowly appeared. Blackened ruins swirled around her, signaling a new being born from ruin and despair. From within the dark mist, the girl's body surged with strength as if summoned from the abyss. The Saint of Light had now become the harbinger of darkness. A soft breath echoed in the cold air. Each breath carried magic and a strange sensation as if another entity was speaking through her. The girl, now fully transformed, smiled calmly amid the last remaining sunlight. In those eyes, no trace of mercy remained, only twisted freedom and pure darkness. Swept away by the madness of dark power, the royal skeleton laughed maniacally. He screamed in extreme excitement, as if the moment he had waited for centuries had finally arrived. Under the distorted, admiring gaze of the summoner, the girl, now completely corrupted, lifted her head proudly. Her appearance far exceeded his initial imagination, a symbol of twisted and exquisite destruction. Shrouded in darkness, the royal skeleton leaned close to the new believer's ear, delivering the first command. His eyes flashed with the light of one who had just found the perfect weapon for devastation. The blazing red dusk covered the battlefield as a simple but cold command rang out. Eliminate him. The target was none other than the only one still sober and standing firm, Jinwoo. The armored arm of the girl raised amid the chaotic energy mist. The aura of dark magic began to gather around her, marking the start of an unavoidable attack. Within the swirling black energy, she swung her arm, unleashing cruel power. Darkness surged violently, turning her into the embodiment of destruction amid the collapsing battlefield. A pitch-black beam tore through space, shooting toward Jiwoo. The terrifying shockwave blasted everything in its path, while the bone mage merely stepped back, savoring the scene with a cruel smile. Jiwoo, with clenched eyes, summoned twin light swords in a life-or-death moment. The blue blades flashed, a symbol of the last fighting will against the awakened evil. The first clash between the two opposites created a shockwave that shook the ground. The girl dove down from above, while Jiwoo steadfastly blocked the blow with all his remaining strength. They collided head-on, causing a fierce explosion that shattered the ground beneath their feet. Rocks scattered, light and darkness entwined like two worlds colliding at a fateful dusk. Jinhyuk gripped his sword tightly, bringing it across his face in a swift motion. The lightning-fast attack stance signaled a fierce counterattack about to be unleashed. In a violent leap from above, Teresa plunged down like a black meteor at dusk, creating a powerful explosion that sent rocks flying, her dark power erupting uncontrollably. The blade pierced the ground, embedding like a marker signaling the battle's ignition. A sharp sound rang out, ending the silence before the storm. Jinhyuk stood amid the rubble, a slight smile appearing at the corner of his mouth. He teased, "You've changed a lot," then glanced down at his sword as if reminiscing about a different Teresa. Teresa responded with angry eyes, a twisted smile, and a reproachful voice. "Then you should have treated me better before." The two charged at each other like two lightning bolts clashing in a storm. One wielded a sword, the other wielded darkness. The battle between old acquaintances had become a deadly duel. In an ink-black shadow, an observer unconsciously uttered a stunned, amazed thought that could not be hidden. Teresa lunged forward with explosive killing intent. Her face was no longer a symbol of faith or healing but a rage nurtured by darkness. The couple Casey and Judro watched from afar with sparkling, admiring eyes. Despite the danger, they could not hide their excitement. Teresa, the traitor or hero, was truly awesome. Dodging and counterattacking, Teresa swung her arm with satisfaction. "So exhilarating," she shouted as she relentlessly attacked Jinhyuk, unleashing all the frustration she had once suppressed in her role as the gentle saint. The female warrior suddenly charged forward, her face full of anger, attacking while uttering reproaches about the opponent's flirtatious habits, the one she always wanted to get close to but never could reach. She slammed her strike hard into the ground as if releasing all her fury, simultaneously revealing her resentment about the presence of the little vampire girl who suspiciously lingered around that fool. And what drove her most insane, that boy didn't even know who that little vampire girl was. That pent-up frustration made her scream uncontrollably, fueling her rage even more. As her fury surged, she spun swiftly like lightning, her eyes blazing, roaring with anger, accompanied by a deadly leap toward the boy. With fiercely glowing eyes, she soared into the air, sword ready to strike down, determined to put her opponent on the defensive. The boy barely raised his sword to block, his eyes filled with surprise. Roaring in madness, she shouted as if the whole world had turned its back on her feelings. The long-accumulated resentment now burst uncontrollably. Their swords clashed, producing a sharp clang, sparks flying fiercely in the air as power and emotions collided in an unrelenting explosion. Both were pushed back by the powerful sword clash. The ground cracked as their feet scraped strongly against the surface, leaving long skid marks in the thick atmosphere of killing intent. The girl landed heavily, creating a fierce dust and stone explosion behind her. The blazing red sunset illuminated the figure of a warrior who had lost all reason. The boy held his sword steady, sweat on his face, but his gaze remained calm. In his heart, a thought suddenly appeared. She was growing stronger every minute, every second, fueled by the evil energy from Balelord Doom. As the battle reached its breaking point, Jinhyuk activated the skill Grave of Swords. A mysterious purple aura rose around the crossed dragon swords before his chest, signaling a decisive strike about to be unleashed. The ground cracked beneath his feet as energy erupted. Jinhyuk clearly understood, if he didn't finish her now, everything would spiral out of control. With cold eyes fixed on his opponent, Jinhyuk charged like a purple storm. He knew well that if she absorbed more power from Doom, no one would be able to stop her. Not to be outdone, the girl unleashed the skill Demon's Soul Sword Dance. Interwoven sword strikes formed a deadly web spiraling through space, clashing with Jinhyuk's speed. The fierce confrontation exploded as their strongest skills collided. The girl summoned Wild Demon Eradication, a deadly axe strike descending, determined to cut off all resistance. In a flash, she curled her lips into a sneer. "You're fast," she teased, her blue eyes gleaming dangerously. But she hadn't finished speaking. She stared directly at the hesitant Jinhyuk, her sword just inches from his neck. "Why don't you deliver the finishing blow?" The question pierced his mind. Jinhyuk smiled, sweat dripping but eyes sharp. He understood clearly, if he killed her, Soft's skill Blessing of Stars might not activate, and they would both die together. The girl remained unshaken. A calm smile appeared as she raised her hand. The dark purple magical flame concentrated on her metal hand. A new intention was being executed. Her jet black steel hand suddenly shot out, gripping Jinhyuk's chest tightly. The unexpected counterattack opened a new chapter in their merciless duel. Gripped by the collar and pulled close, Jinhyuk faced an enemy with wild eyes. She whispered provocatively, as if trying to read the fear in his eyes. The weakness, according to her, was unacceptable. From another position, Jinhyuk's teammate screamed in horror through the communication device. The sight of Jinhyuk facing an overwhelmingly strong enemy made him unable to contain his worry. Immediately, the blonde girl appeared, covering the teammate's mouth. With cold eyes, she gave a brief order, "Stay still." She knew that if chaos broke out, the consequences would be beyond control. Elsewhere, Teresa clearly sensed a change. Her purple eyes reflected something unstable. "Something is happening to her," she muttered, realizing the energy was mutating. Gripped by the chin, Jinhyuk remained unshaken. With a calm expression and cold reply, he told her that he was not her type, while also doubting Soft's so-called taste. The female warrior smirked, her metal fingers lightly scratching his shoulder. Her gaze was no longer just hostile, it mixed with a strange curiosity and amusement about Jinhyuk. Suddenly, her metal hand pierced straight into Jinhyuk's chest. Blood spurted out. She whispered, clearly sensing a stream of evil energy leaking from his body, an energy not belonging to an ordinary human. She clenched her hand, drawing back the dark red energy like blood. The dim black aura twisted around her fist, as if assessing or retaining a part of Jinhyuk himself. Then suddenly, she raised her hand to her face, closed her eyes, and let the eerie energy touch her skin. Her expression abruptly stilled, as if controlled by something beyond reason. Opening her eyes, her gaze was sharp yet filled with fascination. She softly said, so alluring. In that moment, Jinhyuk was no longer prey, but something that even demons must heed. Jin Hyuk gave a sly smile, signaling that he was not passive. Instead, he still held a secret card in his hand. The skeletal mage standing afar shouted angrily, demanding the female warrior finish off Jin Hyuk immediately, without hesitation. Contrary to expectations, the female warrior calmly turned away and refused the order, making Jin Hyuk beside her even more composed and mysterious. The skeletal mage's first reaction was a shocked yell. He couldn't believe his subordinate dared to disobey orders. Without hesitation, she declared switching sides, judging Jin Hyuk's demonic energy far superior to that of the skeletal mage. Amid the casual conversation, she even teased that Softy seemed to have feelings for Jin Hyuk, prompting a humorous and gentle response from him. The skeletal mage roared in fury, unable to accept the fact that the warrior he painstakingly created had turned to choose a human. He recalled the terrible deeds he had done, from betraying his promise to Murim to torturing humans just to create that warrior, but now all had become useless. Betrayed and belittled because of another source of demonic energy, he fell into a fierce rage, declaring this incident unforgivable. As his anger peaked, a giant entity under his command immediately acted, unleashing a powerful magical attack on the opponent. Demonic energies surged wildly from the skeletal king's hands as he summoned a black cube, a sealed artifact containing ancient magic, preparing for a terrifying ritual about to unfold. With eyes full of hatred, the skeletal king clenched the cube and roared that he would make the thief who stole what was his pay the price. A system notification appeared, activated, awakening of the black dice. From afar, under the murky red light and swirling dust and rocks, Jin Hyuk and the platinum-haired assassin looked up, staring intently at the rising black energy, a sign of an imminent fierce battle. The girl bearing the demonic clan mark smiled slyly, stepping forward proactively, declaring she would take on the main enemy, the Death Knight, with all the newly awakened power from Jin Hyuk's magic. A massive shockwave echoed across the battlefield, causing the monsters, including zombies and dry soldiers, to suddenly change direction, creating chaos that left the allied factions unable to react in time. The team leader, a muscular man with a bare head on his shoulder, froze when he saw all the monsters simultaneously retreating from the encirclement. He exclaimed suspiciously, "Where are they retreating to?" The chaos forced the human military commander, a soldier wearing a headset, to vigilantly look around. When the shout "Charge!" rang out, he immediately prepared to counterattack, though unaware of what was coming. Jin Hyuk, with a calm yet sharp expression, signaled to the commander, "Please hold them on your side." A clear plan had been laid out beforehand, and now it was time for each piece to move. Realizing the situation, the allied warriors began to gather. The blonde-haired woman gave a brief but firm order: "Stop the undead. Kill as many as possible." All survival now depended on this final defensive line. Jin Hyuk stood amid rising winds and swirling dust, slightly curling his lips into a confident smile. He quietly whispered, "The game has begun," a sign marking the start of a grand strategy being deployed. The face of the Lich King, the final boss of Floor 14, appeared cold and triumphant. His glowing blue eyes reflected the surging demonic energy, signaling an evil power about to be unleashed, surpassing all previous levels. Deathly light spiraled up like a tornado, enveloping the black skeleton's entire body. The Lich King was releasing his true power after awakening the black dice, causing chaotic dark energy to blast everything around like a magical storm descending on the battlefield. A dazzling beam shot out from the magical core, forming a deathly convergence point in the sky. It was the signal for the destructive summoning. The Lich King was preparing to unleash a strike not only aimed at his enemies but a declaration of war against the entire living world. Before the warrior's eyes, a giant creature was born from chaos and death energy. At the same time, Jin Hyuk and the female swordsman stood facing the monster from afar, ready to fight. The battle with the Floor 14 boss, the true final boss, was now officially beginning. The corpses along with piles of rubble were thrown into the air, marking the beginning of a terrifying event as the forces of darkness began to invade the surface. From within the dense black mist, a gigantic creature in the form of a terrifying undead appeared, covered by deathly aura and eerie light from its blazing blue eyes. The sudden appearance of the monster caused two nearby players to panic. They were both terrified and unable to comprehend what was descending from the blood-red sky. Jin Hyuk stepped forward amid the chaos, issuing an urgent order to his allies. They must immediately block the undead swarming toward Valordum. He clearly explained the situation. Although the alliance members were fighting fiercely, the number of undead from all over Europe was too great for them to control. Jin Hyuk's voice grew serious as he stated the consequences. If the undead gathered at Valordum, that monster would continue to grow even stronger. From afar, the silhouette of the giant monster was trampling every structure on its path, leaving behind black smoke and widespread destruction. Hearing Jin Hyuk's command, the warriors immediately responded, determined to rush and stop the horde of undead pouring into the city from multiple directions. Standing alone in the ruined streets, Jin Hyuk raised his head to face the giant creature, preparing a spectacular battle debut to attract its attention. He smiled confidently, clenched his fists, silently promising to keep his opponent's eyes fixed on him, a psychological strike to gain the upper hand in the tough battle ahead. From deep underground, a mysterious creature began to move. Its eyes glowed in the darkness, signaling the presence of a force with unknown intentions. With a twisted smile and fiery eyes, Yim suddenly leapt up from a pit of rocks, stomping hard on the head of a stubborn subordinate in a commanding pose, signaling an attack. Yam's powerful jump caused a violent shockwave, cracking the ground and signaling the start of a surprise strike against the enemy. The impact sent the giant bone monster flying into the air. Taken by surprise, its body lost balance and failed to react in time. In the chaos, the Veilordum undead plunged headfirst into the ground, producing a thunderous rumble, a sign that Yam had truly enraged him. Veilordum's furious movements stirred a strong swirling black aura. A subordinate below looked up and quietly affirmed, "Lord Veilordum is very angry." Meanwhile, a heavily armored skeletal knight stood tall in the battlefield. He turned to the approaching opponent and coldly said, "Hey, skeleton." The newcomer was Teresa in her fallen form. She stepped forward with a large sword, eyes full of fighting spirit, and reminded of an old grudge. "You're the one who destroyed my friend, aren't you?" A proud smile spread across Teresa's lips. She declared firmly, this time would be different from before because she was stronger and no longer bound like the saint she once was. The skeletal knight showed no fear, responding with interest. He was ready to accept the challenge, calling Teresa the fallen saint and expressing his desire to test her true strength. A fierce explosion pierced the ground, swirling wide like a pit of death opening in the battlefield, signaling a powerful attack that could not be underestimated. From the rubble, the fallen saintess dashed down like a black lightning bolt, her flaming black scythe tearing through space, striking directly at the skeletal knight defending below. Amidst black smoke and clashing light, she shouted angrily. The enemy's arrogant words had ignited her fury, making every attack more frenzied than before. From above, she delivered a continuous barrage of strikes like a hailstorm of scythes onto the knight, each blow heavy as thunder, forcing him to retreat into a chaotic defense. While her quick reactions made every sword stroke unpredictable, the skeletal knight could not hide his surprise, he admitted. This opponent was faster, fiercer, but also more talkative than before. Her face lit up with a wild gleam, a challenging smirk curling her lips as she shouted across the battlefield. She didn't need the enemy's judgment, she was the one taking action. The two weapons clashed, sparks flying brightly across the night. The impact was so strong it created shockwaves that tore through the air around them. The skeletal knight growled, his words filled with confusion and contempt. Why had she betrayed her master? Clearly, he could not comprehend her decision. Before he could finish his question, the fallen saintess launched a powerful counterkick, stomping straight on his face with an angry groan, causing him to stagger. Her eyes blazed with hatred as she responded with a scream. Her affairs were not something an undead like him had the right to judge. The girl with bright, murderous eyes charged into the battlefield, admitting that Kang Jin-hyuk's demonic aura was indeed captivating, but her expression showed defiance, as if that was never enough. She realized the harsh truth. No matter how strong Jin-hyuk's magic was, it was completely overshadowed by Veilordum's infinite demonic aura, a force too great to be compensated by mere personal charm. Despite recognizing the power gap, she laughed carelessly, shrugging mockingly at her opponent as if to say, "So what?" In front of her was Teresa, once strong but now withdrawn and powerless. She spoke coldly and mercilessly, "Goody two-shoes, planning to stay that way forever." In a flashback, she recalled the moment she grabbed Jin-hyuk's collar, the decisive moment that changed everything. It was not just an action but a turning point. After the emotional moment, Teresa finally lifted her head. Her eyes no longer held tears but instead showed a newly reborn determination. With a tearful smile, Teresa gently corrected the name in her heart, Jin-hyuk SSI. She had stopped crying, as if rekindled by light. Looking ahead, the gray-haired girl hissed in her mind, "So what other choice do I have?" The question was rhetorical, meant only to affirm her resolve. Her eyes glowed, black smoke swirling around, and dark patterns appeared on her face, all of which terrified those facing her. She was now the embodiment of unyielding will. Witnessing that image, two children watched in admiration. Their eyes sparkled with reverence as they shouted that she was the ideal role model, the coolest Nuna, making the scene suddenly feel lighter, if only for a moment. Jin Hyuk decisively ordered the excited twins to stop hesitating and quickly complete their assigned mission while approaching Yanawa to provide support. In the urgency, Jin Hyuk's eyes reflected seriousness. He knew time was running out and that a wrong decision now could cause everything to collapse. A cold warning was issued. The gray-haired girl reminded Jin Hyuk to maintain a strong enough demonic aura if he wanted to keep her sweet but dangerous threat. She half-joked that if Jin Hyuk bored her goody two-shoes, meaning Teresa, would have yet another reason to stop trying. For her, reason and loyalty were just amusements. While running, Jin Hyuk pondered. He began to wonder, if someone possessed a stronger demonic aura than him, would she betray him again? That thought did not shake Jin Hyuk but only strengthened his resolve. Training his demonic aura was now not just about power but also about binding a dangerous teammate. At that moment, a giant creature, a monstrous skeleton imbued with dark magic, threw a punch that shattered the air, preparing to strike down on Jin Hyuk's head. The giant monster's punch caused the ground to tremble violently, creating a massive explosion that engulfed the entire area, a strike capable of crushing anyone. Jin Hyuk, with a calm demeanor, leapt into the air. Surrounding him were undead being blasted away by the light energy he had gathered in his palm. Without hesitation, Jin Hyuk activated the skill, Daylight, a dazzling light bursting from his hand, ready to purge the undead with the power of holy light. As soon as he activated Daylight, a burst of bright blue energy erupted from Jin Hyuk's palm, piercing straight into the chest of the giant monster. The swirling energy spread rapidly like cannon fire, striking the enemy's weak point. The power of Daylight exploded fiercely, creating a brilliant light beam that seemed to swallow the entire space ahead. The energy reached its peak, ready to sweep away all obstacles within its range. The giant monster howled in pain, its body severely wounded by the recent strike. The arm that once symbolized strength was now destroyed, leaving behind black smoke rising like the ashes of a defeated force. Amid the devastated battlefield, Teresa held the line firmly. She realized that even though the monster was defeated, the undead horde kept coming like a tide, shattering hopes for a swift end. From the center of the encirclement, a powerful mage, the one behind the undead, appeared calmly. He coldly acknowledged his opponent's magical skills but implied that it was still not enough to overthrow him. He sneered arrogantly, his violet eyes piercing into Jin Hyuk, posing the question, "What have you sacrificed to become stronger?" As if probing the core of true power. That question was not only a provocation but also a confession. He recalled familiar faces, family, friends, all of whom he had sacrificed in pursuit of the ultimate dark magic power. To reach his current position, he had betrayed the very kingdom he once served. The fires of war burned everything behind him, his past, loyalty, and all remaining humanity. Not only did he sacrifice relationships, but he also abandoned himself. His body and soul were pushed into an abyss in exchange for absolute power. His face was now nothing but a cold skull, devoid of emotion, filled only with ambition. Under the blue-purple light from overlapping magical circles, he roared his final declaration, "I have abandoned everything." An absolute affirmation of the point of no return he had chosen, heralding the destructive magic about to be unleashed. Casey and Teresa were horrified as dozens of magical formations appeared simultaneously, a spectacle far beyond ordinary magical standards. The shockwave spreading made them unable to believe their eyes. While everyone was still stunned, Jin Hyuk stood proudly beneath the radiant matrix sky, blue magical light glowing above him, proving the transcendent level of a mage beyond normal limits. A cold, confident smile curved Jin Hyuk's lips. Facing both the undead legion and the powerful mage, he showed no fear, only readiness for the decisive strike. "Is that so?" Jin Hyuk's casual reply echoed as he activated his special skill, Fusion. A radiant aura shone as multiple layered magical conduits enveloped his body, preparing for an unconventional combination. The system immediately announced Jin Hyuk was merging the fire element with the ice barrier. Although the system warned that no more could be added, he still pushed beyond that rigid limit in his own way. Not stopping there, he continued to activate a high-level skill, 10-star, multi-layer barrier, while adding the Daylight attribute, a reckless yet calculated move. With blazing eyes, Jin Hyuk roared, "Then I will show you even more." A soaring aura and power beyond standards shook the entire space. The announcement, "Fusion successful," sounded just as the opponent was stunned. The complete magic had been formed, a symbol of superiority and unbreakable will. On another front, two undead commanders looked up to the massive energy in the sky, magical light reflecting in their eyes filled with suspicion and unease. In the chaos, a gray-haired female warrior, seemingly an enemy, could not hide her amazement. Her eyes widened, marveling at the extraordinary power from Jin Hyuk never seen before. The girl looked up at the brightly shining magical formations in the sky and whispered, "So beautiful." Jinhyuk activated infinite magic, stepping into the battlefield with unlimited mana capacity. Despite possessing overwhelming power, the skill lasted only 1 minute. He was ready to make use of every second. Amid the lingering smoke and dust on the battlefield, two young friends who had just escaped danger now knelt beside the unconscious Melina. Panic and worry were clearly visible on their faces as they witnessed the unimaginable power that had just been unleashed. In another area, under the brilliant light radiating from numerous magic formations in the sky, the gray-haired female warrior and her comrades simultaneously looked up, eyes wide with astonishment as they sensed the intense magical energy vibrating throughout the space. Jinhyuk leapt into the air, skillfully controlling two abilities, Daylight and Bullseye, combining them into an absolutely precise strike, preparing to deliver a devastating blow to his target. A blinding light exploded from the heart of the magic formation, causing the space to tremble violently. High-level magic was activated simultaneously, as if the entire sky was illuminated by a series of powerful attacks. Dozens of beams of light shot through the giant enemy's body at once, each beam as precise as if guided by a deity. Jinhyuk, small compared to his opponent, still stood firm amid the rain of destructive light. Without hesitation, Jinhyuk continued to cast Sigh of the Frost Witch. A giant spirit in the form of an ice and snow goddess appeared behind him, blowing a chilling aura that enveloped the entire battlefield. The icy breath from the skill immediately froze the enemy. A thick layer of ice encased the target's body, making every movement slow and sluggish, as if swallowed by eternal winter. In an instant, the enemy realized the absolute difference. The glowing eyes sparkling in the hollow skull trembled as they thought, "He's too fast." Panic clearly shone on the otherwise expressionless face of a skeleton. The enemy strained to break the ice, each step thundering loudly, accompanied by hellfire erupting from the cracks he created, signaling a counterattack that could not be underestimated. Despite being injured and damaged by successive attacks, the enemy finally activated the ultimate skill, Hellfire. The entire space turned fiery red, with fierce magic as if burning everything in hellfire. Balor Doom was stunned when he saw Kong Jinhyuk break the magic seal with a barrier, something that was not supposed to be used for offense. He could not believe that a human's magic could be stronger than the power he had sacrificed everything to obtain. In a fit of extreme rage, Doom screamed, denying the injustice he was forced to endure. The system confirmed that the copying condition was completed, making Balor Doom taste the bitterness of defeat. Kong Jinhyuk officially succeeded in copying the skill, Undead Creation, from Doom. Jinhyuk coldly responded to the anger, unfair. A brilliant magical light gathered around his hands. He bluntly mocked, "You've lived so long and still don't understand?" Doom was horrified as a giant magic formation lit up right before him, its pressure rendering him immobile. Jinhyuk activated Eternal Redemption, an infinite destructive magic, accompanied by the assertion, "Life is never fair." A massive beam of light descended, burning everything around it, pushing Balor Doom into his own hell. The ground cracked open in the center of the ruined city while a cold notification appeared, "Unlimited magic has ended." Kong Jinhyuk propped himself up amidst the rubble, his body exhausted but his gaze resolute. He forced himself to breathe a sigh of relief, proving he had survived the final devastating blow. From afar, two friends, a blonde girl and a light-haired boy, watched Jinhyuk in tense silence. The blonde girl, Teresa, broke into a bright smile, teasing her blonde-haired friend Judro about his unlucky words. Kong Jinhyuk silently evaluated his own performance, a flicker of pride appearing in his heart. The swirling ashes condensed into a stream of black air. The enemy was not yet completely destroyed. A voice echoed, full of regret and respect. Thick black smoke coiled around Jinhyuk as he stood upright, facing the strange aura. Balor Doom, the villain, rose from the ruins, declaring coldly, "I'm not that easy to kill." Seeing this, Judro forced a regretful smile while Teresa glanced over with a look of reproach and exasperation. Kong Jinhyuk analyzed Balor Doom's weakness, asserting that he could only be finished off by striking his life vessel. He coldly and accurately guessed where Doom hid the life vessel, causing Doom to fall silent and become cautious. Balor Doom suspected Jinhyuk knew too much, sarcastically remarking that now he was out of mana and powerless to resist. Jinhyuk confidently retorted, admitting his actions were meant to distract a grand mage like Doom. Jinhyuk's sarcastic words stunned Doom, who was confused and struck in his pride. Jinhyuk approached the mound suspected to conceal the life vessel, prompting an immediate reaction from Doom. The mound began to crack, revealing the hidden truth beneath. Yam suddenly leapt up from the ground, holding a sparkling orb, the very life vessel. Balor Doom panicked upon realizing that the object in Yam's hand was his own life vessel. Yam smirked triumphantly, proudly displaying the orb containing Doom's sole source of survival power. Jinhyuk held Goguma and the life force vessel in his hands, smiling with praise while the old summon remained unwithdrawn, catching Doom completely off guard. Baylord Doom was shaken when he realized all the previous magic was merely a ruse to distract him while the enemy searched for the life vessel. Jinhyuk revealed that it was Goguma who had sensed the magic artifact hidden deep underground, leaving Doom with no room to deny. Jinhyuk casually spun the magic artifact on his fingertip as Doom panicked and shouted for them to stop immediately. Jinhyuk glared coldly, repeating the word "don't" as a command Doom could not accept in the current situation. As soon as he finished speaking, Jinhyuk and Goguma bounced the life vessel orb back and forth, driving Doom to despair as he begged to be enslaved just to make them stop. Jinhyuk laughed coldly, declaring that Doom had committed too many sins to expect mercy. He recounted Doom's crimes, massacring countless people and torturing those he cared about, intensifying the chilling atmosphere. He questioned Doom, "Did you hear when those people begged for mercy?" while holding the magic artifact and staring directly at his enemy. Baylord Doom trembled in despair. Jinhyuk coldly concluded there would be no easy way out of the impending horror. Goguma happily sucked on the magic orb like candy, shocking the opponent who did not expect the old summon to still be present. Baylord Doom broke out in a cold sweat upon realizing he had been deceived all along by a clever distraction tactic. Kong Jinhyuk smiled confidently, revealing that Goguma could scent the magic orb from afar, rendering all of Doom's efforts to hide it useless. Jinhyuk spun the orb like a toy, causing both Goguma and Doom to shout in alarm, demanding an immediate stop. Jinhyuk narrowed his eyes coldly upon hearing the word "don't," treating it as a command and feeling even more inclined to tease. While Doom desperately begged them to stop, Jinhyuk and Goguma juggled the orb as if playing ball. Jinhyuk gripped the orb tightly, declaring that Doom had committed too many crimes to be easily forgiven. He mentioned Doom's crimes, killing civilians and torturing his loved ones, with eyes full of hatred. Jinhyuk's cold question pierced Doom's conscience. "When others begged you, did you stop?" Baylord Doom trembled, eyes filled with fear as Jinhyuk declared he would not grant him an easy death. Baylord Doom screamed in pain as his skull began to crumble under the critical strike. Baylord Doom's body dissolved into black smoke, and the system announced that he, the boss of Floor 14, had been officially defeated. A special item dropped from Baylord Doom's corpse, the Archmage's robe, shimmering with immense power. Although Kong Jinhyuk dealt 90% of the damage, Baek Seolin delivered the final blow, which made him furious. Jinhyuk was angry to learn that the rewards would be distributed based on contribution, losing the chance to claim the valuable drop alone. Rage flared in Jinhyuk's eyes while Goguma happily chewed. He growled in frustration over losing exclusive rights. Baek Seolin calmly sheathed her sword, admitting that her strike didn't go as planned but still maintained a smile. She smiled, praising Jinhyuk and acknowledging that he was as formidable as rumored, hard to defeat and destined to reach the middle floors soon. Baek Seolin withdrew after the mental duel, promising a rematch when both were at their strongest. Jinhyuk stood silently, his body leaning forward from exhaustion, holding Goguma amidst the battlefield's ruins. Kong Jinhyuk collapsed from exhaustion beside Goguma after the battle ended. Despite his worn-out body, Jinhyuk struggled to get up, taking heavy steps forward. Casey approached from behind, reporting that the Death Knight had retreated through a portal. Jinhyuk intended to ask Casey's name, but she quickly told him to just call her Nuna for convenience. Casey decided to leave, seeing no reason to stay near Jinhyuk's mana source any longer. She urged Jinhyuk to take good care of the fragile one, referring to Sophia, while she was away. She and Sophia held hands as a promise, a gentle but binding farewell. Casey smiled, saying that since they still lived under the same roof, they needed to help each other. Sophia was embarrassed when Casey lightly slapped her and told her to be proactive in expressing her feelings to Jinhyuk. Casey threatened that if Sophia didn't make her feelings clear, she would take Jinhyuk for herself. Seolin smiled amusedly at Teresa's embarrassed yet determined expression, calling her adorable. As she left, Seolin gave a sudden push, causing Teresa to cling tightly to Jinhyuk midair. Falling to the ground, Teresa shed tears as she hugged Jinhyuk, expressing her joy at seeing him again. Casey and Judro were stunned to realize Seolin had completely disappeared after her decisive performance. From afar, a mysterious man approached holding a metal ring in his hand, his gaze cold. Jinhyuk recognized the newcomer, turning seriously to prepare for the new situation. Goguma looked on bewildered while Jinhyuk gently lifted Teresa's chin, teasing her for putting on an act. The sunset closed the battle. Teresa rested her head on Jinhyuk's chest, surrounded by familiar comrades. The bloodied but calm stranger looked at the couple and whispered the name Teresa. A long-toothed undead drooling and groaning in the forest, showing the hunger of the remaining zombies in Europe. Long-toothed undead and other zombies surround the skeleton soldiers. The human faction hides behind, preparing to attack. Casey signals the strategy. He and Yanawa will lead the attack while teammates block the enemy's retreat. Yanawa looks at Casey in surprise and teases him. He is now trustworthy, very different from before. Casey smiles in response, affirming his maturity and current determination. Yanawa and Casey charge into the undead formation, ready to fight even though Baylor Doom is dead. The zombies are not yet exterminated. Many countries cooperate to hunt down the remaining undead across Europe, a long and arduous war. The attack in Europe ended after many sacrifices. Over 100,000 people died in the terrible outbreak. Originating from the event in Beijing, humanity continuously fell into crisis and had to face the unprecedented. To protect themselves from the threat of the tower, the world established an international organization called the Awakening Association. Awakening associations and major guilds worldwide united in alliance to overcome the tower's challenges. However, that oath of cooperation was only superficial. Unity still held many hidden matters. A strange girl wearing a baseball cap looks up at the sky, surprised to see the world outside the tower for the first time. The purple-haired girl comments that this world is both beautiful and strange, similar yet different from where she once lived. Kong Jinhyuk replies, explaining that the city used to be more beautiful before being destroyed and is now being rebuilt. The girl lowers her head sadly, feeling guilty because she knows the culprit of the destruction was a boss who once appeared from the tower. Jinhyuk places his hand on her head, gently asking why she wears such a guilty expression, as if she caused it herself. He reassures her she is not at fault. As his person, she needs to hold her head high and move forward. The girl nods, her eyes somewhat relieved of guilt by Jinhyuk's trust. Another voice agrees, he's right, probably from a new character about to appear. Bellis proudly teaches that a floor boss cannot easily bow, they must maintain a dignified aura to uphold authority. The white-haired girl becomes even more arrogant after being brought here, causing Kong Jinhyuk to reconsider retraining her. Jinhyuk turns his back and walks through the rebuilding city, carrying heavy thoughts. He recalls the moment the tower appeared in real life. At that time, he thought it was just a game. But after Yanawa's death, then the Beijing incident, and now Europe, everything has changed. Even if he conquers the tower, Jinhyuk still wonders, if there is nothing left to protect, does that victory have meaning? He walks in silence, the question echoing in his mind, does all of this still have meaning? A strange man, full of wounds, approaches and calls Jinhyuk a tailgater. The two sit on a bench. Jinhyuk feels relieved to see the man alive and asks what happened. The man recounts, defeating the 5 great clans was not difficult, but during the fight with Murim, another opponent suddenly appeared. The mysterious man says he was defeated with a single strike. The opponent's power far exceeded all standards. Knocked down quickly, he gasps and repeats in his mind about that strong one, a completely different person. That person introduced himself as Heaven and Earth Dragon Black Emperor, a white-haired master with a majestic aura. Jinhyuk is stunned, realizing the Black Emperor has entered the game, perhaps even earlier than he thought. Jinhyuk silently thinks about being unable to contact Wuliang, perhaps because she discovered he had lied. The wounded man wonders why Jinhyuk is so disappointed when he should be worried about bigger matters. Putting old matters aside, the man asks about Teresa, a teammate who fought life and death alongside Jinhyuk. Jinhyuk turned his head, his eyes confused as he thought about Teresa's current condition. Teresa is still hospitalized, seriously injured, but she will recover soon. Beside the hospital bed was Bexialan, gently reassuring that someone has always been watching over Teresa. Jinhyuk grumbled sarcastically, trying to hide his troubled feelings after parting with the friend who just left. Bellis appeared, directly asking Jinhyuk whether the corrupted girl deserved to live or not. Jinhyuk smiled, confirming she was still fine, only now 2 personalities coexist within her. Bellis tilted her head in confusion at the concept of multiple personalities, which she had never encountered before. Jinhyuk explained, Teresa chose to harmonize the dark personality with her original self to live in peace. Bellis clicked her tongue and turned away, reluctantly accepting and saying she would intervene if the situation changed. The group, including Bellis, the purple-haired girl wearing a mask, name unknown, and Jinhyuk, left the ruined scene. He pondered the demonic energy and the impact of the king's curse. Jinhyuk gradually admitted that the purple-haired girl was more trustworthy than he had thought. Perhaps variables also have their own value. While walking, Jin Hyuk felt his phone vibrate unusually, his eyes surprised. He picked it up and saw a call from Han Sang-jin with a level 1 security code, signaling an extremely urgent situation. Jin Hyuk received an emergency call from a stranger, with a formal tone. The caller identified as the chairman of the Awakening Association, requesting Jin Hyuk to come immediately. The chairman said there were people waiting to discuss important matters with Jin Hyuk. Information related to the empire making Jin Hyuk's eyes turn cold and sharp. A private jet was prepared to pick up Jin Hyuk for the conference. The purple-haired girl wearing a hat saw the plane for the first time, while Bellis was excited like a teacher showing off to her student. Bellis prepared a flight briefing with a serious and dramatic expression, making the student nervous. Bellis warned that if the instructions were not followed correctly, the plane would crash, startling the purple-haired girl. The first instruction, take off your shoes and sit down. The girl quickly complied without doubt. Next, both stood on their seats, clapping 5 times while marching in place, a silly ritual but done very seriously. Bellis enthusiastically guided the purple-haired girl wearing a white hat on how to protect herself by covering her eyes until the plane took off. The purple-haired girl followed seriously, without doubting teacher Bellis's words. Kang Jin-hyuk smiled slyly, secretly taking a photo of the two to tease them later. The plane left the runway, flew through the clouds, beginning a new mysterious journey. Both Bellis and her new student fell asleep in the luxury cabin of the private jet. Jin-hyuk silently increased his stamina, speed, and magic power stats while the two girls slept soundly. Jin-hyuk's eyes lit up as he prepared to examine the skill he had copied from Baylor Doom. The skill, Undead Creation, appeared. Jin-hyuk can create undead soldiers from corpses. Jin Hyuk began searching for materials on the plane to test the newly learned skill. On the food tray he found a bone fragment, an ideal material for undead creation. Kang Jin Hyuk activated Undead Creation, causing a small skeleton to unexpectedly come to life from the plate of food. Seeing the skeleton created from beef bone, Jin Hyuk humorously named the creature T-Bone on a whim. Although he found the skill quite weak at this point, Jin Hyuk still held T-Bone and decided to utilize it in future battles. He leaned back to relax, reflecting on having Baek Seolin steal the boss's life but comforted himself that he had the Archmage's cloak. While Jin Hyuk and everyone else slept soundly, T-Bone woke up and curiously looked around the plane cabin. Giggling laughter echoed from the luggage compartment, revealing something lurking there that was mysterious and unusual. The two blonde brothers with twisted mysterious smiles declared they are living together and will always be together, evoking a vague threat. The Korean Awakening Association building lit up brightly at night as the international guests grew impatient waiting. The chairman of the Awakening Association calmly reassured that Kang Jin Hyuk was on his way and asked everyone to be patient. One of the two guests, with a sarcastic and contemptuous tone, called the Korean Association trash for lacking the capability to organize. Chandra, an S-ranker from Guild Gandhara, angrily scolded, while Arun, also an S-ranker, maintained a solemn and dignified silence. The chairman tried to remain polite, emphasizing that hotels and equipment support had been prepared to show respect to the two S-rankers. However, in the end, he could not hold back his anger, revealing his power and questioning the disrespectful attitude of the others. Chandra smirked provocatively while Arun remained silent, his eyes full of coldness and authority. Kang Jin Hyuk suddenly appeared behind, placing his hand on the chairman's shoulder, gently praising his patience and proper conduct. Chandra and Arun turned around with astonished expressions as they sensed the strong aura from Jin Hyuk's presence. With a confident smile, Kang Jin Hyuk stepped forward, declaring he would take over the conversation from here, ready to confront directly. Chairman Han Sang-jin withdrew from the meeting room, leaving private space for Kang Jin Hyuk and the two S-rankers of Guild Gandhara. As the door closed, Kang Jin Hyuk sat quietly waiting for the others to speak, ready to face the negotiation. Kang Jin Hyuk coldly broke the silence, demanding the others clarify the purpose of the meeting. Chandra and Baek Seolin were stunned, realizing they had not sensed Jin Hyuk's presence when entering the room. Chandra worriedly wondered if Jin Hyuk possessed some stealth skill beyond their understanding. Once thinking Jin Hyuk was just a show-off on screen, Chandra now felt the terrifying pressure from his real presence. The invisible aura radiated by Kang Jin Hyuk surpassed even Han Sang-jin, the head of the association. Chandra tried to stay calm and spoke up, "I want to make a cooperation proposal." He explained about the ongoing battle on the middle floors of the tower where powerful forces fought for control affecting all players. Chandra straightforwardly proposed Kang Jin Hyuk should ally with Guild Gandhara and the martial arts faction in the upcoming war. Kang Jinhyuk was annoyed hearing Murim mentioned, suspicious about the connection between the invitation and this traditional power. Baeksealan activated a military map suggesting exchanging secret information about the Empire in return for cooperation. The map displayed key positions of the Empire's army, top secret intelligence being revealed. Jinhyuk seriously evaluated the information, realizing its accuracy could only come from insiders. He began to doubt the data's origin and asked them to clarify their true purpose. Chandra smiled smugly, affirming they had even more important information to exchange. Chandra set a condition: if Jinhyuk agreed to ally, they would reveal the identity of a spy within the Empire. Jinhyuk realized Guild Gandhara had deeply interfered in Murim to the extent of knowing their entire spy network. Baeksealan tactfully emphasized that the spy could be exploited to obtain even more information. Chandra persuaded that Murim was the advantageous side and allying with them meant siding with victory. Jinhyuk couldn't help but laugh at the arrogant cooperation proposal from the two opposite him. Both members from Guild Gandhara were stunned as Jinhyuk burst out laughing and called their proposal ridiculous. Jinhyuk activated the skill Eye of Gluttony to read the true thoughts of his opponents through their blazing red eyes. Chandra and Baeksealan panicked seeing Jinhyuk's expression suddenly change into something terrifying. Chandra suspected that Jinhyuk already knew the identity of the spy inside the Empire. Both hurriedly asked what Jinhyuk wanted, but he stood up coldly declaring he didn't need that trash. A strange man appeared, criticizing their disrespect towards the chairman of the Awakening Association and warning about proper behavior in a foreign land. Jinhyuk summoned magic and smiled wickedly, declaring he could not overlook the contemptuous attitude from earlier. As Baeksealan was about to warn Chandra, both were grabbed by Jinhyuk's hands filled with energy. A dazzling flash from Jinhyuk's attack exploded, engulfing the entire hall scene. Floor 21, Murim, appeared with rugged mountains hidden in mist, marking the emergence of an ancient power. On a mountain trail, Black Emperor and disciple Woleong walked forward, discussing the one who dared to impersonate the heir of the heavenly demon. Black Emperor, the black dragon of heaven and earth, hesitated between admiration and contempt for the impostor. Stopping with a serious gaze, Black Emperor asked Woleong to tell details about Kang Jinhyuk. Woleong bowed respectfully, describing Kang Jinhyuk as someone who stops at nothing to achieve his goals. She continued to condemn Jinhyuk, comparing him to villains, and sent a message to her comrades: always trust me. A flashback appeared. Kang Jinhyuk firmly stated, "I will never abandon my people." Woleong was stunned recalling those words, her eyes gradually changing, revealing inner turmoil. She fell silent, lowering her gaze, a clear sign of someone hiding true feelings. Black Emperor was secretly amazed. How could Jinhyuk make Woleong, known for her coldness, be moved? Black Emperor questioned Woleong about her feelings for Jinhyuk, believing she had softened. Woleong bowed apologetically, trying to hide her embarrassment. Black Emperor condemned Kang Jinhyuk as a traitor to the heavenly demon sect, tarnishing its reputation. He affirmed he could not forgive Jinhyuk. Black Emperor called Hyaljum, a mysterious figure in a black cloak, immediately responded, showing a special role under his command. Black Emperor ordered Hyaljum to bring Kang Jinhyuk for a meeting. Hyaljum silently nodded, accepting the mission. Black Emperor revealed suspicion, wanting to personally verify why Woleong, famously cold, was shaken by Jinhyuk. Hyaljum leapt into the sky, leaving the bamboo forest at superhuman speed to carry out the order. The scene shifted to the real world, where a skyscraper stood tall in a modern city. The apartment door clicked open, signaling someone had successfully broken in. Two blonde characters, Casey and Judro, rejoiced at finally opening the door. Casey smiled mischievously, holding a bunch of keys. Both entered Kang Jinhyuk's apartment, excitedly admiring the new space, imagining it as their new home. The blonde twin brother happily rolled on the wide bed, enjoying life in Kang Jinhyuk's new home. The blonde twin sister jumped excitedly on the sofa, planning a surprise for Jinhyuk when he returned. Both watched the news, laughing heartily seeing S-Ranka's Chandra and Arun of Guild Gandhara caught wandering in underwear in Seoul. Kang Jinhyuk returned home, opening the door tiredly, as if anticipating what was about to happen. The twin siblings had fallen asleep on the couch, naturally at home, heads resting on each other, sound asleep. Jinhyuk stood silently watching the scene before quietly closing the door without a word. Elsewhere, Jinhyuk rubbed his forehead and thought, the twins must have broken into my house waiting. Gaguma tilted his head, confused by Jinhyuk's helpless expression, then was comforted by his gentle petting. Suddenly, a large swarm of sharp, venomous ants poured out from the cave, emitting a terrifying sound. Three strange creatures, one orange, one green, one with flowers on its head, looked at the ant swarm below the cave and shuddered together in disgust. Kang Jinhyuk gathered the summoned creatures at floor 12, Queen Ant's Nest, causing the group to be confused about the purpose of the assembly. Jinhyuk introduced a new small member, a tiny skeleton named T-Bone, sparking curiosity among the group. Jinhyuk asked the creatures in the team to help T-Bone train to become stronger, leaving the group puzzled and questioning the method. Without saying much, Jinhyuk delivered a straight kick, sending the whole group, including T-Bone, flying into the nest to fight the ants. Gaguma tried to plead with sparkling eyes for mercy, but Jinhyuk stood firm, unmoved. Jinhyuk told Gaguma he also had to join because he was the big brother of the group, making Gaguma reluctantly sigh and accept. Gaguma shouted "Tweet," then charged straight into the ant nest, joining the other creatures in the chaotic battle against the venomous ants. Jinhyuk smiled with satisfaction seeing the complete formation entering the battle as planned. T-Bone bravely fought among the ants and continuously leveled up, beginning the journey of growth for a small bone warrior. T-Bone fights fiercely on the blazing battlefield, continuously receiving level-up notifications alongside Gaguma and teammates. Jinhyuk observes from afar, confident that Gaguma will help T-Bone grow remarkably after the arduous training period. Bellis appears via magical communication, asking Jinhyuk what his next move will be after handling floor 12. Jinhyuk replies that now is the time to advance to the middle floors of the tower to change the power dynamics gradually dominated by Murim. Jinhyuk assesses that Murim is acting earlier than expected. Without intervention, they will take over the entire middle floors. With the death of Veilordum, the boss of floor 14, players have 90 days to conquer floor 15, and Jinhyuk will use that time to build a strategic foundation. Bellis worries about Jinhyuk's past betrayal of the Empire. She doubts whether they will accept cooperation again. Jinhyuk reveals the royal ring sent by Penheimer, proving the Empire has decided to trust and needs him. Bellis tries to justify past actions but remains flustered when Jinhyuk exposes her pragmatic thoughts. Jinhyuk activates the royal ring to teleport to the Empire's territory, preparing to build the political relationships necessary for his plan. Jinhyuk accepts an invitation from residents of the designated floor and begins teleporting to the specified location within the tower. After teleporting, Jinhyuk appears in a large room with a world map beneath his feet, looking confused by the new situation. He looks around cautiously, trying to determine his position and the situation he is facing. In front of Jinhyuk is an elderly man with a dignified appearance, sitting on a throne and watching him with a stern gaze. Jinhyuk is stunned to realize the man before him is the Emperor, a legendary figure only heard of in myths. His name is Emperor Reinhardt III, a powerful emperor who once brought the empire to its peak in the past. Suddenly, royal guards appear and draw their swords, reacting strongly to Jinhyuk's unannounced intrusion. Jinhyuk is immediately restrained, collapsing to the floor as he hears the guards shout loudly, "Intruder!" Under pressure, Jinhyuk bitterly realizes he has ruined his first impression with the powerful emperor. Reinhardt III, once a living legend, but after the mysterious death of his heir, he gradually lost his will and became a weak old lion. Emperor Reinhardt III, once mighty, is now a sorrowful old man quietly awaiting death. The royal guards fiercely battle to protect the emperor's residence from the sudden appearance of the stranger. Kang Jinhyuk quickly moves through the chaos, the name Penheimer ringing in his mind, the one who summoned him here. A guard kneels in confusion while the Grand Sword Master escorts Reinhardt III to retreat safely under orders. The man beside the Emperor is revealed to be the Grand Sword Master, the Empire's strongest swordsman, absolutely loyal. Kang Jinhyuk continuously dodges and counterattacks flexibly, making it impossible for the royal guards to catch him. He shouts calling Penheimer, hoping he will appear and confirm that he invited him, but only echoes return. Penheimer and the Emperor have disappeared from sight, causing the royal guards to panic even more. Jinhyuk begins to suspect perhaps Penheimer is testing him by pushing him into a dilemma. He decides not to kill anyone, because a violent mistake now would completely ruin all relations with the Empire. A powerful punch from Kang Jinhyuk sends a knight flying backward with a terrible impact. Two knights are knocked off the floor, unable to resist, groaning in pain. Jinhyuk tells himself that as long as he doesn't kill anyone, it's fine, even though his attacks are still too much for them to bear. In the chaos, a knight shouts loudly, ordering everyone to fall back to reorganize their formation. Two new characters, Grand Sword Master Abraham and the silver-armored Mackenzie, appear and declare they will directly confront Jinhyuk. Jinhyuk activates the skill, Eye of Gluttony, his eyes glowing red brightly on the battlefield. Detailed information about Abraham appears, a versatile warrior possessing many sword skills and advanced defensive magic. Jinhyuk knows the skill copying condition is to reveal Mackenzie's weakness in front of Abraham, a sophisticated and ruthless tactic. Jinhyuk smiles wickedly, silently acknowledging this is the cruelest skill copying condition he has ever seen. He notices something unusual. The Grand Sword Master should be on the front lines facing Murim, so why are they still here? Jinhyuk stands in the Emperor's sacred council chamber, facing pressure from the Empire's knights. Abraham Felicia draws his sword, activates the skill Aura Blade, and orders Jinhyuk to surrender unconditionally. Abraham's aura excites the crowd. Everyone holds their breath as they see him wield the famed light sword. Jinhyuk calmly raises his hand, declaring he also knows how to use that skill. Abraham and Mackenzie cannot hide their astonishment seeing Jinhyuk master the secret technique of a sword saint. Jinhyuk summons a giant dark sword, activates the skill Song of Swords, surpassing Aura Blade. The entire hall buzzes. Jinhyuk's sword is longer than Aura Blade, making them wonder if he is truly a sword saint. Jinhyuk senses the atmosphere has shifted, smiles calculatingly, intending to ease the tension. However, a knight warns the crowd not to be deceived by Jinhyuk's appearance. That person declares Jinhyuk is a heretic, citing the sword's eerie purple color instead of pure blue. Duke Benchtelen becomes furious, pointing and accusing Jinhyuk of heresy because of the sword's strange purple aura. He smirks triumphantly, thinking he has found a justified reason to condemn Jinhyuk. The Grand Sword Master, enraged at being exposed, immediately launches a sword attack on Jinhyuk from behind. "Die, filthy heretic," he shouts loudly, but Jinhyuk just turns his head with a look of boredom. The Grand Sword Master is stunned. Jinhyuk easily dodges the strike without even looking. Without hesitation, the Grand Sword Master activates the skill Demon Sword King Step to increase his attack speed. Jinhyuk suddenly disappears from sight, leaving the Grand Sword Master confused about where he went. Just as he realizes, the Grand Sword Master screams in horror as Jinhyuk appears behind him like a ghost. Jinhyuk suddenly appears behind Mackenzie, an armored knight with a terrifying smile and blazing red eyes. The Grand Sword Master panics and shouts seeing Jinhyuk approach Mackenzie, something bad is about to happen. Jinhyuk silently places his hand on Mackenzie's helmet from behind, preparing for a cunning counterattack. A dazzling light reflects off Mackenzie's bald head, making the scene brighten as if it were broad daylight. The sudden light causes maids and soldiers to panic, objects clattering in chaos. Jinhyuk calmly activates the skill Daylight, wearing sunglasses as if making a humorous joke. The light from the skill reflecting off Mackenzie creates a flash-bang effect that blinds all opponents. The knights and Duke Benchtelen clutch their faces and scream in despair as they are attacked by the sudden light. Mackenzie's helmet flies off onto the ground, revealing the reason why the daylight skill was so effective. As the light dims, Mackenzie has collapsed on the floor, while Jinhyuk has completely vanished from the scene. Abraham and Duke Benchtelen angrily order a pursuit, unable to believe the heretic escaped. Abraham rushes to check on Mackenzie, but Mackenzie just sits holding his head, completely confused about what just happened. Mackenzie struggles to stand with a sorrowful voice, saying his teammates' reactions hurt him more than the light did. Abraham awkwardly apologizes to Mackenzie, while Jinhyuk skillfully hides behind a large wall painting. The system confirms that Jinhyuk has successfully copied the skill Accelerant Sword after the dazzling trick just now. In the outskirts of the imperial capital, people were talking about the new series of wanted posters posted everywhere. A wanted poster sketched the portrait of Kang Jinhyuk, the heretic who infiltrated the royal palace with a bounty of 550 million. The public debated the collapsing honor of the royal family as assassins easily penetrated the palace. Bellis frowned, blaming Jinhyuk for becoming a wanted criminal overnight, worried this would hinder their actions. Jinhyuk smiled calmly, thinking being wanted was not serious and even quite interesting. While Bellis was busy worrying about being hunted, Jinhyuk was delighted to have humiliated 2 grand sword saints before retreating. Jinhyuk recalled Benchtelen calling him a heretic, sparking everything and making the situation more complicated. Without avoiding it, Jinhyuk decided to knock on a mysterious house to directly ask why he was wanted. The door opened, revealing a silent and tense moment as if something was about to be revealed. Jinhyuk and Bellis entered, facing the person who silently summoned them here to overturn everything. An old man with white hair and a long beard, sharp-eyed, welcomed Kang Jinhyuk to the secret meeting place in the hidden house. The old man guided Jinhyuk and Bellis inside, inviting them to a simple meal prepared in a crude shelter. Jin Hyuk angrily questioned being trapped as a wanted criminal despite only following the summons of the other party. The old man calmly admitted it was a test to assess Jin Hyuk's adaptability to unexpected situations. Jin Hyuk suppressed his anger and asked directly if he had passed the test. The old man nodded immediately in confirmation. Bellis praised Jin Hyuk's escape skills, while the old man admitted he always exceeded his expectations. Jin Hyuk proposed to start the mission to find the spy immediately and mentioned the agreement about the shortcut to higher levels. The old man smiled in confirmation but implied that Jin Hyuk needed to know the conditions to receive that reward. He revealed that to open the path to the upper levels, the Empire must gain control of the intermediate levels. Inside, Jin Hyuk sneered, calling him a snake because his political ambition was finally exposed. A fierce battlefield was raging on the middle levels, centered on a giant fortress occupied by a giant race. The Grand Sword Master revealed that King Reinhardt, the ruler of the Empire, was in a serious unstable state. King Reinhardt's condition caused nobles in the court to factionalize, vying for power amid the prospect of an empty throne. The Grand Swordmaster was furious at the internal decay while external threats endangered the entire empire. Baek Xiaolin calmly ate while speaking about the risk that Murim would seize everything if the internal factions did not unify soon. Calm Jin Hyuk assessed the situation as worse than expected and asked directly what they wanted him to do in this political game. The Grand Sword Master offered an attractive reward, allowing Jin Hyuk to choose a treasure from the royal treasury if he completed the mission. The mission was revealed. Jin Hyuk would lead the attack on the giant's fortress to help the empire seize the middle levels. Jin Hyuk warned the Grand Sword Master that giving royal treasures to an outsider like him could lead to his execution. The Grand Sword Master swore absolute loyalty, ready to sacrifice his life as long as he could protect the empire and King Reinhardt. A special third mission for the first conqueror of the tower was created by the system, involving supporting Penheimer and Emperor Reinhardt III. Jin Hyuk read the mission content, help Penheimer gain Reinhardt III's trust and lead the empire to prosperity. The promised reward for the mission was an undisclosed privilege, making Jin Hyuk smile meaningfully. Jin Hyuk shook hands with Penheimer, accepting the mission for both personal benefit and the empire's future. Jin Hyuk straightforwardly said, "For my benefit, and for your nation." Penheimer smiled in full agreement. While Jin Hyuk and Penheimer were exchanging words, Bellis reported that she had traced the identity of the spy hiding nearby. Bellis's eyes flashed with alertness as she noticed something unusual outside the door. A strange blonde man had just appeared in the town, walking confidently and mysteriously. The blonde man adjusted his sleeve, a sign that he was about to act. Had a spy been revealed? Bellis warned that someone was approaching carrying a strong aura of magic power. Penheimer suspected another sword saint was tailing them. Feeling ashamed for revealing their whereabouts, Penheimer was determined to make amends through action. Bellis immediately rushed toward the door while Penheimer drew his sword, preparing for the enemy's intrusion. The main door was blown open with a loud explosion, wooden shards flying everywhere. The enemy had arrived. A horde of black-skinned monsters with red eyes and twisted bodies flooded in like a hellish flood. Bellis screamed in terror upon seeing the disgusting creatures pouring in. Immediately after, she swung her arm hard at a monster, shouting angrily, "Disgusting. I just finished eating." Ignoring the howling monsters, Bellis charged into battle with determined eyes and intense anger. A streak of light shot across the room, a counterattack launched by an ally. Penheimer attacked fiercely, shouting loudly, "No one is allowed to touch my guest." Jin Hyuk noticed something strange: necromancy. This empire originally bans dark magic. Jin Hyuk activated the ultimate skill, Dark Heavenly Demon Emperor Arts, purple energy enveloping his body as he prepared to counterattack. Energy exploded from inside the house, tearing off the roof and creating a purple beam that ripped through the sky. The old man panicked as the hideout was destroyed, while Bellis mocked that this place was never safe anyway. Jin Hyuk flew outside, landing amid the monsters swarming the square ahead. The black monsters still didn't know what was happening, standing bewildered as they looked at Jin Hyuk from afar. Jin Hyuk coldly activated the skill, Red Magic Bullet, a blazing red light shooting from his palm. The critical strike tore through the wind, crashing into the monsters, ripping their bodies and causing them to scream in pain. Jin Hyuk landed among the charred monster corpses, his powerful landing creating a shockwave. In a nonchalant tone, Jin Hyuk declared the teasing was over, showing absolute dominance. A mysterious shadow appeared behind Jin Hyuk, mocking that the opening act was not as impressive as expected. A blonde young man introduced himself. "I am Gawain of the Human Magic Organization." With suspicious politeness, he presented himself enigmatically. The scene shifted to the 21st floor, Murim, where rugged cliffs hid beneath a sea of clouds, opening a new scene. In a silent bamboo forest, a cold female swordsman appeared, ready for something important about to happen. A bright blue teleportation gate opened before her eyes, signaling the arrival of a familiar figure. A strange foot stepped out of the gate, heralding the appearance of a powerful character from another world. The girl slightly curled her lips in a smile upon recognizing the newcomer, her eyes revealing a meaningful excitement. Chun Yu-sung appeared from the light, his gaze serious. The silent reunion between the two hinted at a deep and mysterious relationship.